So we feel that the activities that were done down along the lake were done as a exempt use. Scott then went into the FEMA data, floodplains, et cetera. And we all agree that there is an error in the FEMA mapping in this area. It shows that the floodplain going about 30 feet up this cliff. Well, we know that's not right. FEMA knows that's not right. But, and it is something that's going to have to be taken care of before we get building permits on this. However, in 2016, an application was made to FEMA for a LOMA, which is a way of modifying the flood mapping in this area. It was made for the residents at 9 Bridge Road. 9 Bridge Road is the house that's right down in here. When the application was made, Lot 1, there was no subdivision, so this included the entire parcel. This is a copy of the LOMA that shows that house, which is at elevation 111, is stated that it is not within the floodplains. All of our activity is above elevation 160. So obviously, any of the activity that we are proposing is well out of the floodplain. Scott got into the need for a wetlands, a soil survey of this area and how it would affect the regulated activity. Again, if there is any wetland soils on the site, it is immediately adjacent to the lake and to the river. And even if there is, the regulated area offset for wetlands is 100 feet. For the river and the lake, it's 150 feet. So it would not change our mapping of the regulated area because it is well contained within the 150 feet, which is shown here as that red line. And we have no activity anywhere near this potential wetlands, so we don't think this is really necessary. He also questioned the area up in here, which is mapped as a runoff. It takes the piping that is in the state right-of-way and it goes down in here and then goes into the halfway river. Again, the question is this an intermittent water course? And if it is, it would have a 100-foot offset. Again, this area, the 100-foot falls about in this area, so it is well within the already existing regulated area of the site. The next comment was regarding First Light, who is the owner of Lake Zor, and he suggested that we get in contact with First Light in order to see if there is anything on there that would affect us. Their regulatory area is the property line, which again is this area in here, and their regulations are their limit of authority goes up to the property line. So again, we're at least 100 feet away from any activity on their property. Scott gets into the site plan and comments on it, and he asked that, although it doesn't show one here, there is a septic system through here The reserve area is at the bottom. Similarly, there is an area up in here. His suggestion is to move the reserve area into an area of, I think he calls it initial development. And so that when we come back, should they ever have to come back because of the failure of the septic system, it could be approved. This line right here is the limit of disturbance line and silt fence for that matter. So what we want to do is also make it the limit of the lawn. So that reserve area here and here would already be in the initial development area, even if it is a maintained lawn area. Now, we selected this particular line because it's the top of a steep bank, and it's all wooded in here. So this made a natural break between the steep cliff wooded area and what we would use for lawn area. We are proposing, or will offer, to construct a split rail fence at that location, and which again would be a further demarcation between the two uses. And rather than putting the wetlands markers along the regulated area line, we would place them on the posts on the fence area, which makes it a little bit more reasonable than up through the lawn area. Again, this is natural demarcation, and we're proposing to mark it also. Scott notes that the commission needs to determine the potential development plan and how it affects the wetlands and the impact on the wetlands. We believe that we have proposed a development that will have a very low impact on the river lake area. All activities are at least 100 feet horizontal from the lake and 40 feet vertical. The slope of this property does not lend itself to accessing the lake through there, so it's not subject to people creating paths from the lawn area down to the lake. It's just too steep and too far away. If they would have to get access somewhere else. Scott said that the survey should include all facilities along the lake. As I said, the shed is not really a shed, it's a houseboat. And all other facilities along there are docks and ramps, and they are shown on the survey. He notes also that processed stone was placed on the driveway, which was done in a, we feel, well, first of all, it's in this area, right along where the docks are. And we placed or the applicant placed the process there as a way of maintaining the driveway, which again is a non-regulated use.
Bill, I wasn't talking about that, although I was talking about there's processed stone up here.
Oh, okay.
In a parking area, and there's processed stone that runs down the hill in a couple places. It looks like it was in areas of septic testing, that kind of thing.
Yeah, well, that gets into my next thing, and that was Scott asked for historic information on the site. We have done some research on this, looking for aerial photographs and prior uses for the site. Aerial photographs do not show any details in this area. They're either too high, there isn't enough resolution from facing north, so you're not looking into the sun, and it gives very poor resolution, so we can't offer you any of that. The site in the 1920s, 30s, was used as a campground. This area, again at the top where we're proposing the houses, had various small cabins on there for use for people, I don't know where they were coming from, most likely the city, which would overlook the river. This area has been historically used for a dock, moor, and boat launch area similar to Eichler's Cove in Newtown. This area in here that Scott was just referring to was a staging area used by DOT. When they constructed this berm along their frontage or our frontage on the state property, this berm was built as a barrier so that people coming down Route 111 who couldn't stop or didn't know there was an intersection there were stopped from going into the lake by this barrier. In any case, the state used this area as a staging area for the berm, for repairs for bridges further up. So the process that Scott's referring to is in this area, and it was done by the state, who apparently don't need permits, but anyhow, they were the origin of that. Down and through here, this may have been from testing, it may have been runoff from the staging activities. In any case, we feel that this, as a referral to the Planning and Zoning Commission, has a very low impact or potential impact on the resources of the area. The development is too far away and there's too large a elevation difference for these two lots to be a problem. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
So at this time, we're just talking about referral to P and Z and not the development. That's going to show up in the public hearing, correct?
Well, as I said, there's two applications here tonight.
Understood.
The first one is the referral, and you're right on that.
So.
Right now, we're just discussing the referral, right?
Right, so it's not about the details of the development of the lots.
No.
Correct.
So on the surface, which will affect both applications, I completely understand your reasoning for not showing a wetland boundary, not showing whether or not the off-site watercourse is, whether it's intermittent or not, and then showing a jurisdictional boundary on the property, because you're saying that there's a boundary that covers it with the lake.
Yes.
While I understand that completely, at the same time, and the difficulty in trying to get to the edge of the lake, maybe because of the steepness, to get that approximate wetland boundary. I guess one of the questions is, how did you get your takeoff for the upland review from the lake? What did you use for that measurement?
The wetted area or the boundary of the lake, river.
Ordinary high water? Or
Right. High water at the time it was mapped, yeah.
was there surveyors out here doing any
Yes.
work?
Yes, we did, yes, it was done by Tracy Lewis, which is the first
On the
page
survey.
of the packet.
And the question was, did they survey that edge of the lake, I guess, is the question.
To the extent that they produced topo in that, contour lines in that area, yes. It is also.
Or was it mostly from LiDAR or something? The point is, just from the jurisdictional standpoint in getting those boundaries, whether the off-site intermittent watercourse has an upland review area, we should know that, and there should be overlapping lines. Similarly, if there's a wetland that is adjacent to the lake that's on these properties, then it should be known that there are wetlands on the property, not just a water line. And that could be a wetland scientist going down, identifying what's down there. obviously, you could get to the edge, you have docks and floating, and you have the gravel access road, and there's a relatively level area, at least to get access down along there. But we should have that information in terms of what resources are we dealing with on the property.
Just
We
for
have
the
upland
referral.
review areas, and we have, well, it's, to me, it's whether or not it's a complete application. That's in my mind. I mean, the first step, we're here because we're a wetlands and watercourses
Right.
agency. I understand where you're coming from with you got the watercourse part of it. And the wetland piece is whether or not there's wetlands on the property, and what's that acreage, and that goes to the Connecticut deep form that gets filed too in terms of acreage. Not that you're disturbing it, but that it's there, and are we within the upland review of the wetlands and the watercourse like we see on every other application. Similarly, we have an off-site resource potentially, not instructing anyone to go off the property to do the
Right.
delineation, but, viewing, observing from the property, is it a resource, is it not? Is it something that we should take into consideration? Obviously, we're looking at the entire site because it all flows downhill to those areas, but I think the resources, to me, is important along the lake. And
Actually,
understanding what the biology is there.
Our point on this was that may be necessary for the actual development, but for a referral, we didn't think it was necessary. Also, whatever this outflow area in here, it's whether it would be defined, there would be no real reason to go onto the property. It's just, is this a wet intermittent water course, or is it just a runoff area from the pipes? So that could be done without it. It's just that we have no development in that area, and it's all within, if it is, it's regulated area, it's already what we have shown it. It won't change that.
Right, but you'll have regulated areas on the property, not just due to the lake, but due to other surrounding resources that are on and or adjacent to the site.
I agree with you. I mean, we know that, it's just that how they're
Right.
treated is the same.
And the impact analysis is not for this, that would be for the application for the development. It's just getting the resource boundaries on this, showing that, okay, here are my jurisdictional areas that we're reviewing for this referral. And we don't have the wetland one. Now, I'm just one commissioner throwing it out there, that in my mind, it's something that should be with the application. I understand, difficulty in getting to some locations, but at the same time, it's a job that has to get done. So, that's my own opinion on this piece of the project.
Yeah, it's John Kimball, 1428 Monroe Turnpike. I own the company that owns the property. Yeah, we got the comments at 10:29 today, and it indicated that the commission wanted a soil scientist review of it. We had assumed wrongly, because of the steep pitch to the water and the fact that it was a river and literally a cliff going into the water, that it was an obvious demarcation line. But to eliminate any issues, I contacted Bill Kenny already today, and he'll go out and flag and write a report for the commission for their benefit. So we don't have an issue with it. I would have done it immediately if I had heard that was the issue at on the acceptance of the application.
And the reason I bring it up, even if he says, went out there, yep, there's no wetlands, when we get to the public hearing for the other application, if you don't have that information, that from a credible professional, then you have no answer, and then it could be an incomplete application. So it only helps you to have a letter that says there is or there's not, whatever.
No, and I appreciate that, and with respect to that, it may be to everybody's benefit that we adjourn that public hearing when we get to it later and wait for a report from a soil scientist, because we don't want to waste the commission's time going over the information redundantly, so.
For the record, that comment that I had on there was put on because that was a comment of the commission when this application, the previous application for this subdivision was submitted. That was a comment of the commission, which was relayed to the applicant in the subsequent letter. So I merely was copying what was originally indicated to the applicant.
I have a question on your maintenance of the floating dock and the existing docks in the area. When was this maintenance done?
Last year?
We bought the property a couple of years, John Kimball again, we bought the property a couple of years ago, and, you know, we did some probably last year. You know, the first light lowers the water level, and it's, you know, it seems like a building palooza on the lake. You know, from one end to the other, people go out and start doing their dock maintenance. So we kind of, I think we did it probably 2 years. 1 year we put just new surface boards on one of the docks, and the other year we shored up a retaining wall because there was an existing one that was kind of falling apart and falling into the lake. So.
Okay. Was there any contact with the Wetlands office before this was done?
No, and that's I know that even on that there's a form for regulated whatever it is, working on unregulated thing. I did not file paperwork for it, and that's my fault. And I should have filed paperwork. And if I need to file paperwork to document it, you know, that's on
Because
me.
even if you had contacted the Wetlands office, it's not the office that makes that jurisdictional ruling, it's the commission.
Right.
So that needs to be brought before the commission before there's any work done in whether or not it's going to be permitted, and if we decide that, yes, it falls under those categories, there's no problem, the work can be done. But it has to be brought in front of us first.
No, I understand it. This town is unlike any other, but it has its rules, and I will work to follow them.
Do you want that filed retroactively?
I believe that would be
Well,
appropriate.
two things. For the record, that's not unique to this town. Those are from from the state's model regulations, if you recall.
Right.
The
Mhm.
jurisdictional ruling is a requirement
It's
of
right
the
under statutes.
state of Connecticut, not the town.
Right.
And I would say that, well, I guess, you know, I'm not concerned all that much about maintenance if it's done already. A lot of the times what's the concern about an activity like that is the other things, the temporary things that happen sometimes, siltation and erosion control, sometimes method of access, things like that are the opportunity to kind of just work with the property owner to make sure that, you know, nothing happens that shouldn't happen.
Right.
I guess for their sake, it probably would be easy to issue a permitted use as a retroactive thing. Then they got something for their.
We will be coming in, since, you know, Scott's made contact with First Light. First Light's also like, they haven't even mapped 100% of Lake Zor yet, but they're enhancing their whole lake. You know, they finally recognize that Lake Zor is part of the system of lakes that they have. And so we'll also be, you know, doing the registration with First Light, which will also involve interaction with the commission. So we will, and we want to do some repairs to the other part of the dock. So we'll bring something in for the whole shorefront because they require a planting plan and, vegetative buffers and things like that. So we'll have to bring something in that kind of addresses that whole section and deals with Scott's issues relative to soil setup and erosion control.
Okay.
All right?
Scott, you said you were going to have a meeting with First Light?
Yeah, when I talked to them, they were interested in, they want to do an inspection, just have a look at it, because they're saying that they would be permitting any activity such as, I guess, the boathouse along the river's edge. So they wanted to meet with me to take a look at that, to talk about the overlap of jurisdiction, et cetera.
Could I be part of that meeting?
Oh, absolutely, sure. I didn't set it up yet. But,
No, I got that.
I have another question concerning the dock and that whole area. That technically will belong to Lot 2? Is it considered Lot 2 now?
Yes.
With the subdivision?
Most of it. Some of it's on Lot 1, but yes, there are docks
Okay.
on Lot 2.
And yet they can't access it through their own property? They
Not
have to
through
go
their
through the
own
neighboring
property.
properties?
So, yeah,
To get there?
John Kimball again. So I reserved an easement just so that we didn't end up with 3 accesses going down a steep hill. I reserved an easement over the pre-existing driveway here
Okay, well,
to
that
get
makes a lot
down
of
to
sense.
the lower level so that we didn't have to create 2 more ways to get down to the water because that
Okay.
would have added a substantial amount of disturbance.
And there's a gravel drive that comes from the other end to the,
So
it comes out the,
There's a gravel drive that's been there since the 30s. It comes from
Right.
here all the way down, and then.
oh, it
winds
makes
back
a,
down
it makes a
here.
switchback.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I
There's a
didn't.
couple of S
It
turns
comes
for the slope.
down. At one point, it also went straight up. You know, there's all kinds of ruins and stuff on the property from previous. Because I guess at one time they just needed to ramp up the speed and go straight up the hill. There's a 1950s car right here in the woods from the one that didn't make it all the way up. So we'll include that in our some kind of cleanup measures.
Okay,
Just-
okay. I didn't see that the switchback on the map, that wasn't
Yeah.
included. It just looked like there were
This,
two driveways.
It starts Ridge Road here, and it starts, you go down through there to the house that's on Lot 1.
Okay. Okay. For the subdivision, I have nothing more.
Well, if there are no other comments, I will say that I will get my notes that I presented tonight typed up, and the soil survey, and we'll get that in 1 week before your next hearing, so you have time to review all of this.
Anything else?
Not on this, no.
Anything else from the commission on the subdivision referral? Okay, so we'll continue it to our next meeting for that
So
information.
before you, oh, that's right, I'm sorry, I was thinking it was a public hearing.
Right, not this
You
one.
want to read the exhibits? We just got one, I think.
Yeah.
Just get that in
So-
the record.
Bill, just for your information, the submission, the soil report should come in about the 20th, next Wednesday. Is
Right.
that too soon?
It's actually more dependent on the snow than anything else.
Yeah,
I
okay,
think we
all right,
can-
well, I mean, if you can, great, if you can't, that's all right too. It's just-
If we can't get it done, we'll just have to postpone it to the following meeting, so
Okay.
the commission has a full week to
Okay.
review it.
Thanks. Okay, so the submissions that we had submitted were Health Department comments by Rich Jackson dated March 8th, 2019. There was Exhibit 2 is supplemental information on locating the floodway boundary submitted by Scott Stratzline. Exhibit 3 were the town engineer comments dated March 12th, 2019. And Exhibit 4 is the Loma determination document by FEMA dated January 6, 2016.
Thank you. Okay. So we're going to move on to regulated activities. There's no regular meetings scheduled for this evening.
Just a suggestion on the regulated activities, you might want to switch them only because they're kind of up and talking already about their application. I don't know if that, the commission wants to accept that, but
You guys
just a
all right with that?
suggestion.
You want to just hear the 5 Bridge public hearing because the stuff is already here? Okay, so we're going to go to RWC 2019-05, 5 Bridge Road, single-family home with associated site improvements, Bridge LLC, Kimball. This is the opening of the public hearing.
This is the other part of the same application. The first part was to get a referral to the Planning and Zoning Commission. This is for the actual activities on this lot. Now, as you saw in the last one, it is our intent to subdivide this into 2 parts, but right now we're doing what we call Lot 2, and it encompasses the entire site. We're going to open this and really not say anything new. So it is the same activities, same idea. The split rail fence will be put in here as a demarcation between the steep slopes and what would be the lawn area of the house. This one house, again, will be served by a septic system and a private well. The septic system is in here. The reserve area is part of the lawn area, which would be the initial development that would be approved with this project. The reason for doing this in the order that we are is that there is a person who wants to build that house. And what we want to do is get the approval for the development on this lot, simultaneously go for the subdivision so that we can create the lot that would be on this house. Again, Scott asked similar questions. The answers are all pretty much the same. I'm not going to go through them again, but again, we will ask that this hearing be open and then continued until we can get the soils report for this area. Is there any other questions?
So this, I do have a question, is that right?
Oh, yeah.
So the previous one was for the 2-lot subdivision referral.
Referral.
Right, this, maybe it's a stupid question. Why is it then on this just showing 1 lot and not the property line? I mean, it hasn't been approved yet, so is that why?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, because we
It still
have
shows
to
it as
treat
1 lot.
this- We have to treat this as 1 lot because that's what it is now.
Yeah.
And until we get the subdivision, it will continue that way. But between this and the subdivision, there will be no changes to the development scheme for this portion.
I think if you're also proposing the split rail fence with the placards,
Yes,
that you'll show it on the plan too then?
yes.
Your limited disturbance, you talked earlier about placing it on the edge of the drop-off.
Yes,
It looks like it's kind of on the edge at one point to where that and then it's actually down the hill, it looks like.
I didn't follow that.
I mean, it doesn't look like it's at the edge of the drop-off for its entirety.
In this area, no, it's not. We would have to go back to the,
No, I mean, I'm just talking in the existing area that was shown on the previous plans as well. I don't really want to zoom in on the plan.
It's down the bottom. That one.
Right
Yep.
there.
how do I get to the,
I don't know what you did. I don't know what you did.
Hold on.
All right, hold on.
I know.
I think you went out of the whole thing.
Yes, should be it.
I don't even see the, oh, there it is. Do you see the drive?
The drive got nudged out, it looks like. Can you check the USB drive there?
Oh, you might have hit it with the mouse, maybe, that's what happened.
Pull it out and reinsert it.
Yeah,
All right, let me see.
give it a minute.
See if it pops up.
There we go.
There you go. You got it from there, or you want me to get it?
no,
Go ahead. Current use.
current meeting.
Second one,
Nope, second one.
second one.
No, he has to go back to the.
Oh, I'm
previous.
sorry.
This is, I mean, there's not an angle point there. It's just.
No, I understand, but if you zoom into right around there somewhere. Okay, right
can
where it
drag it.
says,
Approximate floodway.
right there, you can see, you see what I'm saying? The slope in that area seems a lot steeper than everywhere else. See what I'm saying?
Well, other than, if you, so you're saying
I'm just-
maybe move this line
A little bit,
back,
oh, yeah,
back
I
to that
mean,
point and go from here to here to there?
there you go.
Well, there, according to what John just said, there was a path in there, again, where he's saying it came from the old house and went up to the campsite area.
Oh, so you're saying there's a path along that line?
Somewhere in this area. So rather than just show it on the map, why don't we say that we will put it on the downhill side of the existing path?
Okay.
You said that somebody wants to build this house right away. Am I
Yes,
hearing that properly? Is this the design that the person has chosen?
yeah, this is not just a fictitious house. This is their plans, and that's the shape of the plan.
Okay, I have no problem with the shape of the house or anything, but I was wondering if it would make more sense to pull more of the house up toward 111, giving him or her more yard that faces the lake that is not as hilly. I mean, I look at that and I see a sloped backyard. And I look between the house and the driveway for the other parcel, and I see a much flatter section. It looks like you could get a much better backyard, or the yard that faces the lake, if you were to pull the house more towards 111. It's just something that struck me as I was looking at it.
Sorry, they asked Maria to put it over here. Sorry. They asked for it to be like, they wanted the house to be here, so it could be, it can't be right out of the water. And so I pulled it up as far away from the water as we could and still satisfy the customer. So they like the idea of having a flat area.
Oh, they want on that side, okay.
And they've got a deck, that's a covered deck here and that they, can sit on, and the house orients, the entire orientation of the house looks out basically down channel between the Newtown docks and the docks on the right-hand side directly over the lake, so.
How much of that can they actually see from the house with the trees in the way?
Enough because of where the driveway's positioned, and we kind of went out to the site and positioned the house and used the test holes to define where they would be standing in different places. And we're able to use the existing clearing from the existing driveway to get the viewpoint,
Great,
so.
okay. And for your recharge galleries, do they have, how much water can they store? Are we just talking 1 inch, or are we talking about more than 1 inch?
1 inch. They're designed for a 1 inch storm over the impervious area, which includes the driveway through here. There's a pipe coming off there into those galleries. And that is, so we can blow that up a little bit. There is a rain garden in this area, which would pick up, the driveway is pitched into this swale, which goes into the rain garden, and then the roof. And again, there's a text in here, but they're covered, so this whole roof area drains into this recharger here.
That's the other
Wait a minute,
lot.
yeah, I was gonna say, we don't have a rain garden on this one. There we go, that's the one I
Same idea.
recognize.
Same, roof here, driveway there.
I like the idea of the rain garden. That's not possible on this property? Because 1 inch is, I understand that that's industry standard and everything, but we're talking about the top of an extremely steep slope. And if we get a 7-inch rain, that water's got to go someplace. Not that I'm saying you need to assimilate 7 inches, but could you assimilate a little more?
Obviously, we can. I mean, all it takes is money. So, but we felt that this is what the town had been requiring, and the distance from the lake would provide a treatment area, and it's a wooded treatment area.
And you said that you'd be providing a planting plan for the area along the waterfront that has been.
That's what John said, the First Light will require something to that effect. So when we find out their specific requirements, we'll pass that on to the commission.
Do you have a timeline for that? Do you have any idea when that's going to be?
Bill Kenny also does, is a registered landscape architect, so we'll have him probably draft something up in conjunction with the other work that he's doing in terms of the flagging and the whatever function and values report. I'll just have him draft that at the same time, so we can just get that done.
Okay.
Again, it would be a draft, because should First Light have some more, it might have to be modified, but it would be done at the same time.
Lois, I can clarify something too. You're asking about the detention and more. Typically, for existing lots, we require the water quality volume, which is about 1 inch of runoff. But also typically for subdivisions, the Planning and Zoning Commission requires detention up to a 100-year storm. I didn't really comment about that in this case because the downstream area that receives the runoff is the lake. And the lake is very big, and that's controlled through the dam and all of that. So I wasn't that concerned with flooding downstream, that it's just such a big area, 2 houses just gonna get lost in that. So that's the reason why I didn't really mention detention. I don't know if P&Z will think otherwise or whatever, but that's kind of, you're right. Normally, it would be trying to make sure that there's no,
erosion point of view.
yeah, that there's no additional, there's no change in the peak of runoff. Although, when you get involved with just 2 houses, it gets to the point where you're pushing numbers around. It's kind of hard to do that kind of
And there's no road involved in it. Usually subdivisions have a road, which we don't have in this case.
Okay.
I have a erosion concern, and with the sedimentation that you're showing, I think with the phasing of the construction and the grading of the property, having another silt fence at elevation 152 that would wrap around from property line to the other silt fence will provide an extra barrier. If you see what I'm talking
I
about.
obviously can't see 152.
So if you zoom
I
in,
assume that
it's not that, yeah, it's not that tight, but.
You can see the 150.
Why don't,
Which
Bill,
is basically the tallest slope. This is
Well,
152.
that's not the lot that we're looking at. That's not the
Bill,
plans
can
we're
you
looking
put the
at.
other plan up, because this is technically not the plan.
That's not
that
the
was used,
application.
Just in
How do
case.
I get back?
All right,
Without-
just hit X,
This one?
yeah,
That's what I did last time. I lost the whole thing.
all right, and then just click the second one down. All right, so you're not, is it the third one or something?
No. It's gotta be there.
Yeah, what happened on the last time is
Oh, yeah.
he
you're
created a new document,
Oh,
so that one is not good. Close that out. It's the next one down, isn't it?
5 is for the one
right. Yeah, I
lot.
got an idea. So, I think you change the scale, let's just,
Unless it got deleted.
now, there you go.
There you go.
There we are.
I think I'm getting to that same area.
See the existing pin on that corner?
This, yes.
Yeah, that's the 150 is that bold line.
This is
152 is right there, yeah, and you
Right,
follow
so
that
If we
around.
went around like this,
Well, that's tighter than I was even saying, but,
somewhere in this area.
yeah,
The
but,
second, that doesn't replace this one. it's
no,
gonna-
it doesn't replace, no,
Right.
because of the amount of earthwork that's gonna be happening and the steepness and proximity, having that second protection, I think is pretty key.
Should that be a silt fence or silt fence with hay bales?
This is John Kimball. What we generally would do is take because we're going to be doing grading in that area, we'll push up a topsoil berm and then back that with silt fence so that it creates like a depression and swale in
Yeah.
front of the berm.
That's
to-
fine.
To catch any volume of water and doesn't just keep blowing out silt fence.
Yeah, that's,
That's what we would suggest.
yep, that's fine. And then you'd back the berm up with silt fence or hay bales.
Yes.
Right.
That's fine.
Just a suggestion, because I had raised the issue of buffer and plantings, and you're talking about berm. I mean, typically, you got this big lawn here. You got a steep slope, and then you got a lake. So, although the slope will provide some filtration, if when they grade this, if they put a shallow swale along this limited disturbance line at the edge of the lawn, and I'm talking shallow, so it's something that could even be mowed, very, very shallow. It's not anything, it's not a ditch, it's not anything noticeable, but if they put that dip and just make a long level spreader here, then the nitrogen or whatever, the fertilizer coming off the lawn will have a chance to kind of sit at the end of the lawn, right before the woods. And sometimes, there could be buffer enhancement or demarcation plantings. That water will infiltrate back into the ground, and you don't get that pollution down if it stays in the above ground runoff. So
Agreed.
if they do it when they do the grading, it's no extra work.
Again, we'll put it on the downhill side of the path that goes through there, but uphill of the split rail fence. Does that sound?
Is the path indicated on the existing conditions?
Actually, excuse me, Tracy Lewis is gonna go out to the site, with the snow, he couldn't get out there, because I had asked him to pick up the former foundations for the docks, the cottages, and some of the other features, so I'll have him pick up the path at the same time. My biggest concern sometimes with silt fence, especially, like, we've got a very tightly woven ground cover in some of these areas that, but more of an overstory canopy and not a lot of growth underneath, and we don't want to do a lot of disturbance. You know, we want to try and limit the disturbance as much as possible. So, if we could work with, you know, your idea of basically at the edge of the disturbance, mounding up the soil, and then maybe doing, you know, a hay bale check dam on the lower so that we're only penetrating the ground with the stakes for the hay bales. And that way we're not digging, because I found a lot of times we dig a trench, and then that becomes the erosion rut when we leave the site. And, you know, so my only thing to you know, Scott's points about planting and everybody else is, you know, when the people are talking about development on the lots, I'm telling them, you know, we want to cut as few trees as possible. We want, because otherwise, if you cut all the trees, we're going to end up with just invasives and pricker bushes and junk. I said, you know, you want to try and leave as much of the overstory as possible. It's a kind of a darker, you know, forested area, but, you know, if we could get some flexibility, you know, and maybe have Conrad come out and ensure that we've met the intent of the commission in terms of putting a belt and suspenders, but without you know, with the less ground disturbance as possible. Is kind of what we're looking for, you know.
Or would silt socks or something along those lines
Well,
be a better?
the other thing that we could do is put the split rail fence up and, you know, kind of put the silt fence along the split rail fence and then put hay bales on the silt fence, you know what I mean? So we're kind of creating the LOD buffer, so we can give you a detail for that, and then we can kind of get the whole thing in one shot and have almost the finished product installed right up front before we start construction on the house, you know? That way we'll put like a, you know, the 3-rail fence, then we'll maybe put like a deer fencing against it to back up the silt fence, throw the silt fence up, throw some hay bales in, and that'll get us our lower LOD line, you know, and then when we're done with that, we pull the hay bales up, pull the silt fence up, and everything else stays, and we don't have a lot of
With that
disturbance.
small depression around, like Scott was talking about, it's kind of, well, that will stay there, right?
I would do the depression up at the edge of disturbance,
The 152 contour.
you know, because we're not playing any grading beyond or 156 contour, we're not playing grading beyond that, you know?
No,
I think having your first line of protection, as I said, 152, 154, you know, somewhere in that vicinity that wraps around.
Yeah.
You know, because technically you won't need to you're not doing any grading beyond that point.
Right.
You know, you keep it tight up to there, that's your first primary protection, and then the secondary would be at the LOD line.
now,
Right.
are you saying that the LOD would be a temporary, the first line would be a temporary during construction?
Yes.
Until it's
Yes,
stabilized?
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah,
That's
I
the
just wanted to
phasing.
clarify so I know what we're talking about here. So this area back here, you're talking about clearing and grubbing, or are you not?
No, we just wanted it to be known that it's being used for a yard area, but not necessarily cleared, grubbed, and lawn, you know, so.
Oh, okay, I misunderstood. I thought you were
Yeah.
bringing the lawn over.
That was, it's kind of that beyond where the stone bleeder is, that was gonna be more left in, more of
Natural.
a natural state, and then we would put, but, you know, but we know that people are gonna do things, because that's what they do. So they're gonna wanna use the flat area there, so we figured.
To get the envelope
To be
now.
realists,
Mhm.
we would put the LOD line at the end of the area that they're potentially gonna use, because if we put it arbitrarily in the middle of that yard, they're gonna violate it to the edge of the slope, you know, so instead of, we'll put a hard stop at right before the top of the slope, but we weren't planning on clear cutting the trees or anything in that area beyond the stone bleeder.
There'd be no reason to clear
Because we don't want to
trees.
pull those stumps, we don't want to disturb
Well,
the integrity of the ground there.
The only thing I could say, and I appreciate that, but one problem we have is that if, I'm assuming you said you want to put the markers here.
Right.
And the commission, and I'm not saying it's a problem, I'm just saying that the commission needs to recognize that if the markers are put here, and this area the trees are left in this area, that we're not gonna be able to enforce anything. So if they cut those trees down, it's gonna get, and most likely that's what's gonna happen, because they're gonna wanna look at the lake. So although I could appreciate them not doing that at this time, it's very likely that would happen, either with a different property owner. You know it's gonna happen in a situation like this. And I'm not saying not to allow it, I'm just saying, I'm just trying to make sure I understand to inspect and what to regulate, you know?
Yeah, I mean, we are realists, and the realist part of us says put the LOD in the fence line where we're putting it, because that's the flatter area of the site. We feel that that's probably what they're, you know, who knows, maybe they're gonna throw a play set there. I don't know how they're gonna eventually use it, but we didn't want them to have to come back to get another wetland permit to use the flat, like one of the few flat areas, because that's, the contours are relatively far apart, and that's a flatter area. So we figured we'd put the LOD, and then that would be the edge of what would be cut, you know, but.
The only issue with that in the future is if, you don't do that now, and they do it later, they would still need the erosion controls if they're clear cutting, grubbing, and, because that still is an impact to, that could still be an impact to the lake. It's still within the jurisdictional upland review area.
Well, don't forget that if they were to do that, they would need a permit to do that. So, you're granting them the limit of disturbance
Yes,
now.
right.
But to cut more trees, the way we would handle that would be through an administrative approval. And then as part of the administrative, either a permitted use as of right, which includes the commission as a jurisdictional ruling, or an agent approval, which includes the agent as the administrator. Either way, they would be asked to put up siltation
Well,
control.
not to get too down into the weeds, but I think what Mr. Kimball is saying on behalf of the future property owners is permit this now as if we are doing that work.
Yeah,
Not
okay.
come back for another permit application or a jurisdictional determination or whatever. It's permit it now for that activity. All I'm saying is, if we permit it, it doesn't mean that if they don't do that work, but they do it in the future and there's no erosion controls up, and that becomes an issue and an impact, then that's not covered under this. It's
Yeah.
separate, that's all.
It's difficult, because like, you know, when you look at that, whatever, this thing, you know, people will get confused by this being the wetland marker, you know, because that's the jurisdictional marker, and it's in the front yard, you know. They still have a house and everything else behind it, and, you know, I just, but, you know, I understand what you're saying, and it's always difficult when you deal with these things, because you don't want to, you know, you don't want to motivate somebody to then grass the whole thing now, just so they get it grassed. But, you know, I mean, when I've talked to both, because I'm now a customer for the second lot, and when I talk to both of them, I basically say, look, you've got a mature forest here. You can walk through it. You don't have pricker bushes and brambles and all the stuff that you have in a lot of forests. You you can see easily through it. I said, the last thing you want to do is start clear cutting the trees, because if you clear cut the trees, you're going to ruin what we have here on the ground, which is a beautiful, quiet, serene spot with the bubbly brook blowing, going by. It's a great spot, and but it's hard to, you have to permit as a realist, and we kind of looked at the LOD as drawing a line in the sand, and if so, we're saying would want to allow that to be permitted up to that point. So, but that's just what we're asking for, and we'll move from there.
Mr. Kimball, I have a question. The pathway, does the pathway follow, I'm sure you said it, but I missed, there was so many technicalities. Does it follow the LOD at any point?
Yeah, it's very close to where the LOD is.
Okay, but not the entire run, correct?
It mostly follows where that LOD, you kind of, it's weird because you're kind of going across the grade, so it looks steep, but you're actually, because you're walking in a direction across the grades, it's not as steep as it would appear. So it's actually, there's a path,
Does it go down to the lake, or does it
probably
stay parallel to
started
the
as a
lake?
game trail, but it runs into where the gravel driveway is right there. So the gravel driveway is right here.
Okay,
So the pathway kind of runs
so it actually does follow
right
that?
along here, yeah.
That was our intent when we located.
Right,
But
okay.
again, we
Was to
don't
take
have the
the-
survey of the driveway, so we'll have to adjust.
And we'll
I was
get the-
wondering if we could, since that's already a disturbed area, right?
Right.
Would that be possible to use that as our swale, perhaps? That would catch whatever came down. It's not, because Scott isn't talking about a deep swale. I'm just throwing out
Well, at the
ideas
same
here, trying to
time,
come
I
up with
don't,
something.
I would rather, if they're not gonna grade and bring a machine down there and have to
Not touch
cut
it.
vegetation,
Touch it.
they're gonna have to cut vegetation to create a swale,
Yeah.
and then they're gonna come out and they,
Okay.
it just, to
I'm
me,
trying
I
to
don't.
come up with a way to
Yeah.
satisfy both conditions.
I think if they do that soil berm and then do the silt fence at the, around 152, 154 we were talking about,
Yeah,
then
Once this
They
gets,
can back
once
that
this
out.
gets stabilized and we have this established, if we flatten this out instead of remove it altogether, that would kind of be like kind of what Scott's looking at, because it would create along this topo line more of a level spreader effect. If we follow this, the 152 line here, we take the berm and then we just basically flatten it out and level it off and then plant it, we still would have the silt fence behind it until it's established. And then once it's grown in, we remove the silt fence, and then we've got, kind of a leveled out spot that kind of addresses some of Scott's issues. And then it drops down into a more naturally wooded and flat area. And then we've got the split rail fence at the edge. So that would definitely, I think, address all the issues that we raised. Because it gives us a construction practice, and after construction practice, and a method to get the whole thing kind of tightened up. All right, so I guess we'll wait till Bill Kenny.
it'd be interesting to see it on paper.
Yeah.
All right, is there anything else that the commission wants to see for the next one? We're waiting for the stuff from Mr. Kenny. No?
Exhibits?
This is a public hearing, right?
Yes. So Donna, if you wouldn't mind reading the exhibits for me, please?
Exhibit number 1 will be a butter receipts. Exhibit number 2 are town engineer comments dated March 13th. And exhibit number 3 is the bond estimate form dated March 13th.
Thank you very much. So as this is a public hearing, I will open up this hearing to anybody here that would like to make a comment in support of this application. Is there anybody here who would like to make comments in opposition to this application? Seeing none. Is there anybody here that would like to make comment of a general nature as it regards to this application? Seeing none.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. If you could come on up to the microphone, dear, I would appreciate it. Thank you. And just your name and address for the record, if you don't mind.
I'd be happy to. Barbara DeCesar, 35 Bridge Road. I have one point of just information. Does this commission play a role in the determination of the site of the septic tank and the well on property?
That's part of the map here, yes.
Okay, so you would have some control over that. I mean, one of the reasons I ask, obviously, we're concerned about the life of the lake, and when it rains, that stream pours out into the lake, and if you saw the soap suds from the pollution off the land, it's extremely concerning. So I think that any of the issues that you discussed in terms of pollution, I guess that's the way I would say it, would be most appreciated. Yeah, because it can get really messy. Okay?
Okay, thank you
you.
very much.
I'm sorry, ma'am, can we just get the correct spelling of your name?
Sure, it's capital D-E-C-E-S-A-R-E.
Thank you.
I have one more thing. I just wanted
And
to
then
point
give them
it.
opportunity to respond. And then, is that okay? Any response from the applicant? Not that it's necessary.
Is that the end of the comments?
Anybody else? I'm sorry. That's it.
To answer that specific question from the last speaker, this is all governed by the state of Connecticut for the size, by the health department, for the size of the facility.
And John Kimball, we're also concerned about the bubbles that come down the stream. I've often thought of walking up the stream to figure out where they come from.
It's upsetting.
Thank you.
So what we're going to do is ask for a continuance of the hearing. We will get you the soils report from Bill Kenny. We will prepare a detail of the detention facilities incorporating the path and a swale berm combination, depending on what is there, and the additional silt fence immediately downstream, downhill of the disturbance. I believe that covers everything the
I
commission
believe
had.
Commissioner Spence had one more.
I had one more thing, and this is just a housekeeping item. This plan, this is for site improvements, but it's labeled as subdivision of land, Bridge Road.
We'll change the title on that also.
Thank you. All right, we will continue this public hearing to our next meeting, I believe, right?
March
Which is
As long as we have the
27th.
soils report done by a week before that.
We'll deal with that when we get to it, right?
Yep.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. We're gonna go back to our next public hearing, which is IWC 2000, pardon me, 2019-02, 11 Glen Hollow Drive, Ventura, second floor addition, new garage, driveway modification, and detention, continued from our last meeting. For the record, Commissioner Story is recusing himself from this matter. Go drinking out there. Can we take a log off the fire anywhere, any chance?
I don't think they have control.
He wants to take a log off the fire.
1,000 degrees in there.
It is, I have the fan on trying to cool it, but I don't know, I can turn it off and see if that maybe.
Oh, I don't know, I didn't know if there was a thing.
Turn it off and see if it gets a little full.
Take a quick
I'm a
bath.
little warm.
Go for it.
Yeah, must be only, these LED lights are warming us up.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. R.D. Liu for Fuller Engineering, representing 11 Glen Hollow.
Good evening.
This is a continuation from the other week's hearing, and based on the comments from 2 weeks ago's meeting, we resubmitted our sets of plans with the following changes based on the comments at that meeting. One of the comments during that time was from Scott regarding the overflow, so we changed the second line from the proposed manhole going to the existing catch basin to an above surface grate, which will handle in case there's a bigger storm for the overflow. And then one other comment was to include in the title the remediation word, which we did. And the next one was having a enlargement for the rear part of the property, which is shown on this plan. And then one of the comments also was regarding the changing of the boulder line from this part to the edge of the envelope, which is here. And then the wetland markers has also been moved. And then we added the plantings to complete the portion here with plants. And then one of the comments also was regarding the slope going to the existing garage by this bit-comp apron. And currently this bit-comp apron has a slope of 11% and going into the garage. In the proposed development, we will be removing this temporary bit-comp apron and everything will be the grass pavers, and we will reslope at the worst part 8.7% from here to there, and it will be lesser as we go towards this area. I hope we have addressed all the comments from the last week's meeting.
I think one of the other concerns was the way the existing drainage and the pipes that are on the property. There were some questions as to what's flowing where.
Yeah, if you guys, a couple things. I started doing the review, and unfortunately, I apologize, I did not get to finish the review, the revised review for this. But one of the things that you guys asked me to do was to look into the drainage. And we did that. I myself didn't get time to get out there. I'm going by my recollection of the first time I went out for this. But staff got out and we brought me in some additional information. We did some research of the original subdivision in the area, got that drainage. So I do have some information I could walk you through, and I'll show that to you. So let me see if I can find where he put it. He told me he put it on the stick drive, and I'm not sure where. Historical mapping and, okay. So he put it right here.
No,
Yep.
down one.
No, this is what I want. So we got two, I want the other one too. So this is the plan that was approved for the budding property. This is 11 Gun Hollow here. And the house that was put in got approval to put in a cross culvert under their driveway here on the opposite side of their property. Again, this is the common property line. The catch basin that was the point of discussion last time was in this area, the dry well that doesn't go anywhere. And so, actually, let me show you this plan, which will make more sense. This plan is the subdivision plan. And this shows the wetland area that is the original wetland area, and you'll note that what they're showing you is the flag wetlands is smaller now. So according to this plan, there was some filling of the wetland and it has become smaller. The wetland clearly came down this side here, and went across this property in this location down this way. When they built the road comes down, it crosses wetlands here, it obliterated these wetlands, all these wetlands, and they put a drainage system in. Now, there was another plan, and I don't, all these are, Donna? Any
Those
idea?
are submitted.
I don't think it's,
There was,
so there was another plan that showed the drainage piping. Maybe, I think I know where it is. I think it's in here. No, that's one of one, so let's try this. Maybe it's in this one.
There's 9 sheets.
9 sheets.
Yeah, that's where it is. All right, so this shows the drainage system. And what originally happened was this wetland and this wetland here was supposed to drain down here and go through this channel underneath the driveway and into a pipe that brought it into the drainage system in the road. And then it comes down the road, and there is a pipe here. This pipe, as far as we could tell, is an outlet for the underdrain system, which is a perforated underdrain in the roadway. But the majority of the flow goes down the street in this trunk line, crosses the street, goes down further, and ends up all the way down here discharging at the bottom of the hill before the brook, in the Copper Mill Brook. So that's the ultimate destination. Now what happened was, we have no record of it, but apparently when they built the house or sometime afterward, this pipe got extended a little bit in this direction and a lot in this direction, and actually comes all the way across here. And this is just filled in lawn now. And we have no record of any kind of approval or anything, but this pipe ends here in a little hole, but there's very little of this area now that grades to that pipe. And what we have is there's a channel here that drains through a pipe a small pipe, I think it's a 6-inch, that runs over to this dry well. And then there's a 6 or 4-inch pipe that runs out of this wetland here and runs down the side of the barn and over to that pipe. And this whole area and this area here has been graded so that everything now goes to the dry well, that it doesn't have an outlet. And this pipe, which was supposed to be taking the flow, which originally took all the flow, is hardly catching anything. And so the ice there's all ice buildup all in here and down onto the driveway, and the ice comes around here, comes onto the road and down into this catch basin. So it appears to us that this wetland here should be, or the land next to it, should be graded so that a portion of it at least goes to the inlet pipe that's sitting here on the property line that's not catching any water. And that would correct probably a good portion of this problem, but also this dry well here. I mean, clearly when you look at the grading here, this area originally graded down to this driveway. So when they built this house, they should have taken care of that. They should have piped this catch basin over to this catch basin. And we see this problem up here as the responsibility of this property owner at 11 Grand Hollow, but we see the piping of this catch basin over to this roadway catch basin as the responsibility of the abutting property owner. So it's really a twofold solution to getting rid of the drainage problem. It involves this property and treating this wetland and this application a little bit differently to get the water, more water over to this 24-inch pipe which crosses their yard. Now, while you're trying to get your head around that, we also have,
Can I ask a question about that before you
sure,
change it? So apparently, it looks that there was a remedy initially that was either changed after the fact or not followed according to that plan, right? That plan either was either executed at the development time, and the guy says, oh, I want to cover up this swale and extend the pipe and change it, or it was either done at the initial construction, or the homeowner said, I don't like this, let's add some more pipe and fill it, right?
And the problem is that this plan that you're looking at is a plan that was approved when the roadway was built, and it's not an as-built. Typically, we have as-builts of our roadway systems. We can't find one. So we don't know if this is actually here. A quick look today, it looks like it pretty much follows the plan, but because of the snow and limit in time, we were unable to verify that this entire system is as shown here. But clearly, there is a pipe here. We can see, and I got some pictures to show you, we can see the outlet here, we can see the inlet here. We did not walk through their yard because they weren't home and it was quick, so but we have a picture from a distance of this inlet, so clearly this is not as shown on the plan. It clearly was extended up in this area.
But if that picture right there, that plan was actually executed and operating properly, if it's the current, meaning exactly as it is right now, then in order for it to be in its current condition now, it would have been a dual, both sides of the property line would have had to make this happen, because the water is not just, not only is the pipe not there at just where it is on the plan, but the water is now being diverted to a different outlet on this property, and that pipe is not the way it is right now.
Yeah,
So
and I
both
don't know
sides
if-
had to have worked together
I don't know
to
if
make
it
a
was done
change.
together or if they did separate things. There's also, from this outlet, from this inlet here, very close to this inlet, there is a berm with very mature trees on it, cedars or trees that are on this berm, that clearly that berm was put there so that the water coming out of here would hit the berm and flow down this way and then go down the driveway, whereas it used to go this way into the pipe and go down through there.
But why would the person want, if it was already exiting their property and off their property, not their worry anymore, and according to this plan, why would they decide to divert it down keep it on their property?
I think the
That's what
berm is
doesn't
on
make
this,
sense.
I think the berm is on this property. It's not on 11.
So they could have stopped that flow and actually caused the previous owner, whoever did at the time, and actually
They
caused
could have-
themselves another problem on the other side of the property.
Yeah, I suspect that it's really both property owners contributed to the problem. This property was, I believe, we believe that that portion of this wetland was filled, and this area right here, next to the barn, is like a foot and a half higher
Right.
than the floor of the barn. And so we think this, why would you build a barn in a hole?
Yeah.
So this area was filled. It also was labeled as a previous, there was some kind of a chicken coop or some kind of a structure there that was attached to the garage years ago. So we don't know exactly what happened there, but it's clearly higher than the barn. And so we suspect that this was filled in this area, and then after it was filled, my guess is, or during the filling, they needed to get rid of the water, so they diverted it all down to here. I don't know if it was caused by these people doing the grading, or if it was caused by these people putting a berm. It's a combination of both. It's really kind of a little bit of responsibility of both property owners to get rid of this. But it is clear that on this property, this area here has been filled from the plans, this plan we're looking at, and from what we see when we're out in the field. So you can get your little bit clearer picture of this. Here are the photos. This is out by the driveway going into the property where they're putting the catch basin to collect the flow. Why isn't it doing what it's supposed to do here? Usually, well,
Just hit the
like
forward button down the bottom, maybe.
this one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's a different program than my other computer. So that's looking up the driveway. Here's where they want to put the new driveway in here. And the water is seeping out of this portion here and running across the driveway. That's why they want to put the catch basin in and causing ice going into a catch basin here. The catch basin's there. There's some of the ice. Conrad likes to take a lot of pictures. There is quite a bit of use here, so you can see that, I'm not sure what that's all about. This, again, is coming up the driveway that they're going to be erecting. A lot of water, a lot of use. This is where it's seeping out of the woods next to it and crossing the driveway. That would run down and go into the catch basin that they're proposing. That's looking up. What we also notice is there's a low spot in the driveway where the water runs off and runs through a depression where the septic system is and goes over to that catch basin in the abutting property. So that's contributing to the flow as well. That's the depression, the catch basin's over in those trees there. Same thing there. This is looking at the garage area. You can see the drop off into the garage, so clearly, again, the garage is lower. You can see that this area has been, at least we feel, has been filled. And that's a grading issue. That's another shot there you can definitely see. This is a plastic, here's the barn, plastic shed. There's no approval for that, no permit. That's the septic area. That's the septic area of the house across the street. This is hard to see, but they put a drain in here to catch the water, and this comes up here. This is a slope going down to the front of the barn. You can see it real good here. And there's continued use, I might add, of this. You can see quite a bit of rutting. That's the wall they built across the edge of the wetlands. This is on the side of the barns right here. So you can see the debris and material that's been stored out there. That's a footpath, but right over here is where there is a channel that comes out of the wetland and is piped through a 4-inch pipe that goes behind the barn, and that gets diverted. So this runoff that comes out of here used to go to where that 24-inch inlet is on the abutting property, but now goes down through the yard next to the barn and goes over to that catch basin. You can see the equipment and whatever stored there. There's a pole structure here. That inlet is behind this structure back in that area. This is where it's coming out of that wetland. Oh, this is the channel, and this channel was dug deeper, so we feel it's further draining this wetland a little bit. And you can see that there is a large root which cuts across here, and you can't really see it well, but they actually cut a V-notch in this major trunk line here, this root, so that the water would flow through there. So the root was impeding the flow, and they actually cut the root, so this has been lowered a bit here. That's the wall, that's the slashed material. And here's looking down the side of the barn. You can see that the drop off here is about 1.5 feet. And I think that's pretty much it. So I just wanted to relay, here's some toilets if you're looking to go in the wetlands. I think that pretty much tells you what's going on with it. That's as much as we could, this is the staging equipment and construction material. This is where the water flows down through here. Oh, and actually, he does have some more shots here of the, we're getting. This is where the ice is collecting at the top of slope further down the abutter's driveway, and apparently this ice in the water doesn't even get to the catch basin inlet. It's bypassing it and going down onto the driveway, and that's why there's so much ice down there. And you can see it here coming, the barn is up here and it's coming down here, and ponding caused a lot of ice and going down. You can see the ice going down onto the abutting property driveway. There it is there. Catch basin, I think the inlet's like right here, and it's not, most of the water's not going in there. And it goes down onto the driveway. You can see the ice in the driveway, comes down the driveway, comes over here, and then causes an icing along the roadway gutter to the catch basin. So installing a pipe from that basin to the street would get rid of that problem. All right? So that is what we found.
So it looks like that when they leveled up and raised that area around the back of that barn, they cut off that flow going into the neighbor's property, which was being accepted by that pipe under their driveway, and redirecting it.
Yeah, and why
Why would you do
why
that?
would they do that? I don't understand how that happened, and I just don't understand it. Because it would be in both their interests for the water to go through that 24-inch pipe.
Exactly. So
than
there's
it
a
would
remedy
be to
there
where it goes.
that's not being used. So
Yeah.
there's a way, they knew water was having to go
Well, I wouldn't say it's
past
not
the
being
driveway.
used, it's minimal.
Well, but they knew that water was naturally gonna go over the neighbor's driveway, and they put something in place to deal with it. But now that's been circumvented, and now they got a problem down the driveway, when there was a solution in the very beginning, and something's going on there, so.
So, I'm not sure where we go from here. Some of it is overlapping the application and the wetlands and that stuff, and then some of it is really a private issue between the two property owners, and then some of it is an issue with the town. We're probably gonna follow this up a little bit better and then look at the roadway system and what can be done to kind of address that and avoid the icing in our road, because that's not a good situation either. So that's what I found. You asked me to look at it.
You did a good job, thank you.
Can you start
Very
that?
complete.
Can you do that again?
Could I-
I missed the first part. All right. So where are we? What are we adjusting? What do we have to do?
I guess I have a question of the engineer. Since this new situation has been unearthed, does that give you any ideas as to something different that you can do with your approach to try to remedy some of the situations instead of stopgap Band-Aids, perhaps go back to the original, or not the original, but does it change anything about your outlook about how this is going to be addressed?
To address the icing in the front, we can, because right now there's that pipe from right now this water stream is piped to the back of the garage. And this water will flow and contributes to the catch basin here.
Except it doesn't get to the catch basin,
The overflow
and that was the point.
towards directly to the street.
But see, if I
If
guess,
we-
go ahead,
if
I'm
we-
sorry.
Make a suggestion, it might answer that question. If the plan showed that pipe and that, the water directing through the neighbor's property wouldn't we be suggesting that we continue on that course and take all the runoff water in that direction? Because that's what's on the older plan, and then make them work it out with the neighbor that it gets into that 24-inch pipe?
Yeah, at least a portion of it could be, like, for instance, the water coming from that ditch where he just
Yeah, anything
pointed
that
to.
was originally set up to go there, and then anything else that may come along the way. They're already dealing with the addition on the house with the drainage gallery and everything else by the house. Up here by the barn, we could obviously tell that everything is intended to go to that 24-inch pipe on the neighbor's property. So let's just make sure they direct all the water there
We can
and
redirect.
work it out.
Yeah, this.
Because that's
this
kind of what it was
pipe can
intended in
redirect to
initially.
the-
And it's
think
not
of
really
it.
their fault anymore. I mean, whoever, they bought it in that way, but if they, something down the back in the past where the neighbors decided to work together and get them some lawn and cover the
Well,
pipe.
work together or not,
But-
we don't know.
Whatever happened, the fact that matters, that it was pretty clear that the water was leaving the property right there where that swale was on the other plan,
Right.
and there was no problem.
I've got a suggestion. Why don't you, this is a public hearing, why don't you take public comments? I think the property, I'm not sure, but I think the abutting property owners are here, they were here last time. And maybe they have input that might be helpful.
That sounds good.
You could do that and then talk some more after the public input, and then go back to the public input at the end. That might be beneficial. I don't know, it could be, it's a guess.
Okay,
Will we be able to ask questions of the other property owner?
Yeah, I mean, you could take public comment and then go, continue with your application, and then as long as at the end, when all the information is out there, the public has the opportunity to speak about any new information.
Well, let me ask you another question. If you found, or I don't know if that plan says this clearly, but if that extension of that 24-inch pipe was actually a violation, is it possible that could be a violation where it had to be restored to the original condition?
Well, I mean, at the moment, it appears that these activities took place without permits. But it depends upon when that happened. We haven't gotten that far yet. But, yeah, so one could say that. On the other hand, you could look at the application before you and say, this is an opportunity to maybe get some of this corrected. So, the whole labeling as violation kind of is a moot issue at this point, if we're at a point in time where we can talk about what should be done here to rectify
Fix
things.
it.
Let's say it could actually solve two problems, because if there somehow we're in, because there's no permit in violation, by restoring it back to original condition, now everything's good. Everybody's happy.
Yeah, so there's a wetland issue, as I indicated earlier, there's a wetland issue up in here, and clearly this is under your jurisdiction with the upland review line, so it's a wetland issue, but it's also a private drainage issue as well.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Public comments.
okay, so at this point, at the advice of staff, I will solicit for anybody here tonight that would like to speak in favor of this application. Anybody in opposition? Does anybody here have any comments of a general nature as regards to this application?
I guess I stand corrected, I thought the property, they were here last time. I thought
Right.
they might be
I think a neighbor was here.
Oh, well, we tried.
Another-
Yeah.
No, it was a different
Yeah,
neighbor.
was here the
Different
previous
neighbor.
time.
Okay.
There was
Oh, yeah, there was a different neighbor too. I thought-
No, there was two.
There were two.
Hunter and then the person with the ice. in
All
their
right, well, it was
driveway.
a good
Yeah,
try.
you're right.
It was a
Did he
shot,
speak?
yes.
Oh.
Okay, so in regards to the application in front of us. Sir, are you done with your presentation?
Yeah.
Well, the
Actually-
applicant was gonna, the applicant's representative was going to say something, I think, about being able to regrade, and when Keith and you were talking, I think.
No, I was just saying if we can redirect this pipe to the 24-inch somewhere here, that would reduce the flow of water going there, but then that's the neighbor's property, and I don't know if we'll be allowed to do that because
And it gets complicated, because I don't, looking at the old plan, the original plans, the water always went down that way, so when they built their house, the neighbor had the responsibility of handling the water that was entering their property. And they did that by putting a culvert under their driveway. I don't know how long, but time goes by, the water doesn't go there. Now all of a sudden, the town says, well, send that water back there. And they may look at that and say, well, now you're dumping water on our property, who says you have the right to do that? So I don't have answers, unfortunately, I don't have answers for you tonight. I could maybe check it out a little further, I could talk, get more information about the legal aspect of this, and probably the most important thing would be, we can talk to the neighbor and find out what's going on.
Well, we don't want to approve or act on something where now we're just adding more fuel to a problem. And that's where I'm like,
We should we should invite the neighbor here and make a part of the discussion.
Now,
Oh, here's the
Let's,
home.
now
let's let
Donna can tell us, how much time do we have left?
They have not used any of their 65-day extension time.
Okay, so
So they would use,
are we done with all the rest of the
the
time?
hearing would have to be closed on March 20th, and our next meeting's March 27th. So we'd start going into the 65-day extension
All right.
time.
So we're out of time right now, and we would need an extension from the applicant to grant, that you have up to, per statute, you have up to 65 days you could grant the commission, or you could grant for additional time to work this out. And that would be, the only thing I could think is that if you want to get more answers and find out if in fact they can regrade, I could talk to the neighbor and I could talk to the town attorney and obviously continue to work with them.
He had something to
So
say
the
here
homeowner's
before
here,
we.
so.
My name is Hugo Ventura. I'm one of the 11 Renalo. And about the 24 inches pipe, I already talked to my neighbor. And my neighbor said whatever has to be done, he's agreed. He'd help whatever needs to be helped. I asked him to come. I asked him to come today, but unfortunately the wife's got a baby. You can't make it. But he said to me, if you have to write a letter to show to you guys, you can write a letter. She's trying to, in a catchy base, that catchy base go through the driveway. She's want to know with the permit to take it. He's take all the permits. Already tell him I'll do it to my labor. He's agreed with me. He's fine. He said I want to get this done. I want the water. Everything resolved. No problems on nobody.
So that sounds great, so that's very positive.
He's
So
a
I would
very
say we
nice
could then
person.
I could work with them to come up with a plan that will address that. And I guess, so while they're doing that, is there anything you guys want to direct them on as far as anywhere else here? So they're gonna look at to drain into that catch basin. I guess you're also saying that you're gonna work with
You mean
them,
the catch basin or the pipe? Down
excuse me, a pipe inlet. And he's saying he's also gonna work with them to explore the potential of piping this down to the catch basin in the street.
Correct.
So that's great, that'll solve their problems, and I guess we've met several times on this, so just make sure that they have clear direction on anything else you guys
Well,
are
the
looking.
pictures you showed of them, somebody was digging in the wetlands with a tree and all that stuff, that's gotta stop. I mean, they're directing a flow of water through the wetlands.
That's over here.
Yeah, so that's gotta stop, they gotta stop digging in there.
Yeah, that was I think that was a ditch line or a swale of some sorts.
Oh.
But,
The neighbor's property, wasn't it?
yeah,
But,
the other
but
thing-
whose property is it though? That's what I was trying to figure out.
yeah, the other thing I'm noticing too, and.
Because I mean,
and
you
they
did
may be able
say,
to-
that's one of the things, like, stop playing in the wetlands.
Yeah, because when you look at this, there's clearly a man-made slope here that goes around this wetland. So, I mean, it looks to me like this wetland was caused when this area was excavated at one point. They took the hill out and they made this slope back here and they exposed the water table or got close to it. And I think that's what created the wetland. I'm not a soil scientist, but I do read plans and look at contours, and when I see this slope back here, it just is screaming to me that they dug this down, I don't know when.
Well, the wetland
When.
was already
But that's
there.
that's
in
not his
that-
property,
That
right?
historic.
Right, and I'm talking years and years ago.
Before
So
that.
this isn't
So that's not his
anything
property then, those pictures were not on his property then, right?
Oh, they were.
No, they were, I showed you all
Yeah, that's his
pictures.
property.
Oh, okay,
That-
all right,
that was
all right.
dug- That was dug out.
So there is a ditch line in here, but what I was concerned about was, I think that the ditch line was deepened a little bit and the tree root was cut so that the water would drop down.
Well, I mean, it's like a
And-
brook now, those
Yeah.
pictures look like a brook was flowing through
Yeah.
there.
So, I mean, that's clear, in my mind, that's draining the wetlands a bit. And I think that, I don't know when that was done, but, you know, there's so much going on this property. I mean, it's,
Very intricate.
yeah, it's,
Well, I think we've given them an option, and if the two neighbors want to discuss that and come back and with an agreement on how they're, if they want to restore to that condition, that original site plan, if you want to call it, and then it would solve all the problems, and then all the water goes back, that, the engineer directs all the piping and everything to go in that spot where it was supposed to go originally, assuming that's what that was.
okay, so if they pursue that, are you guys good with what they've proposed
Yeah.
as far as leaving the wall that they put in there and allowing the ditch line here to stay? If you're good with all of that, then I don't think they need to change what they've proposed. They then merely need to connect these pipes we're talking about, you know, regrade this area to drain to this inlet, and then these pipes over here, bring it to this, you know, just make sure it comes cleanly to this basin, and then he's gonna connect that basin to the street. The drainage problems should go away then.
Well, I'd like to hear what Ms. Mock has to say.
I wonder if
I
that-
just
I wonder
wanted,
if-
for clarification, to ask, how would you like to handle this? Because now I understand that we're supposed to be working with the neighbor and prepare some sorts of drainage solution. Now, would you like this to be an application on the front of you, a separate application? Because now we're going to be also including the work potentially on neighbor's property, because we're going to be working together to solve the problem. Or would
Yeah,
you like
what-
just to have a sketch or agreement between them? How far would you like to go? Because we really would like to get the permit and close this application, but also we would like to work on the drainage solutions. But what are you expecting from us? What form of commitment or what level of commitment?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, the options are, you got 65 days. So you could come up with a plan to address the problem, and you could get the neighbor to sign this application, and it could be the same application. We could just continue it and finish reviewing it that way. Or, I'm trying to think downstream, I mean, the connection on the neighbor's property and the connection of their catch basin to the street really isn't a wetland issue. That's more of an issue that gets permitted through Public Works, because we have a highway encroachment permit that we would issue for connecting there. So that's an administrative thing. So my thinking is that the quickest, easiest, least expensive way of doing it would be just to try to get this done, try to get a plan that shows what you're gonna do by the 65 days so that they can approve it and you got what you need. Then all you have to do is come in and get a permit from the Public Works Department to actually do the construction to the street.
So a plan and then a written agreement from the neighbor that he agrees to do work which is going to.
Yeah, I think you
is
need
being
something from the
proposed.
neighbor to show that.
And then we will proceed after to receive the highway encroachment and so on and so forth.
Right.
Scott, one other thing I want to comment about, if they were able to, without doing any major work, get as much water runoff, not from the house, but runoff around the barn, and whatever these pipes that were put in to divert water back towards that 24-inch pipe, it's a possibility that that other catch basin there at the bottom of the page, the one alongside the driveway, might, whatever that was intended to do, may start doing and not require them to dig under their driveway and go to the catch basin.
No, they're gonna have to connect in, because there's a large area, this whole side, this whole yard drains to that.
Yeah.
And I showed in the pictures that part of the driveway, now the driveway's been rerouted over to here, but this whole area, and we suspect that in the original plan, they show a swale that goes into the front wetland area, and we suspect that that swale was dug at one point, and we think that the runoff originally came down here through this yard, but they got a septic system there now, you know? That whole yard area is still gonna drain, and there's no outlet there. They're still gonna have a water problem in their driveway.
That goes nowhere?
It goes nowhere, that we can tell. It's a
But it could be
driveway.
overwhelmed right now because of all the extra, where if some of that is circumvented back towards the 24,
Well, I mean,
maybe it's gonna function properly.
let's face it, under low flow conditions, the water will probably seep into the ground and it works okay. It's probably in the wintertime or in a bad spring when it's really wet, the water table comes up, that doesn't work anymore and you get the icing. But the conditions out there that I showed you in the photo clearly are representative of a water problem. We see alligator cracking in the roadway gutter, there's damages along the curb. It's something that is reoccurring. And that other property owner that spoke at the last public hearing kind of confirmed that as well, saying that there's always water coming down off that hill. So I really think to get rid of that icing problem, that neighbor, I would get, especially if they have a new neighbor willing to do the work for them and cut that would, I'm thinking that will cut down on the cost. It's a good opportunity for them to get rid of a problem.
Let's see what they come up with.
Excellent. All right, so
Continue.
But definitely touch base with me with your plan as soon as you have it, so that we can try to make sure that you got something, because we gotta get this wrapped up. You know, we're kind of, 65 days sounds like a lot of
From the
time,
20th,
but
right?
we wanna get it wrapped up before we run out of time. Plus, the spring's coming on too, so, obviously, you don't wanna miss the weather to do the planting and all that. We got a little bit of time now, but if we can get this done, I think the sooner the better.
Okay.
All right?
do we need extension?
Yeah, if you just state that you'll grant the extension, but we're gonna need an email or a letter from you saying that you grant the extension of time.
Okay. The extension.
And I don't know if you wanna ask, just,
Donna, can you read, do you have any exhibits?
yeah, let's go through that just as a preliminary.
So exhibits 1 through 18 were read in previously. New exhibits are exhibit 19, which is a stormwater management report by Fuller Engineering. The document was dated July 2nd, 2018, revision date March 5th, 2019. And also a 9-sheet plan set titled Proposed House Addition Remediation Plan by Fuller Engineering. Document dated July 2nd, 2018, revision date March 4th, 2019.
Thank you.
And in your letter, you might as well grant the full 65-day extension, so we don't have to do it more than once.
Okay.
I'll reach out again if anybody has come in for a public comment in any regard to this application. Seeing none, continue the meeting. the hearing.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Someone go get, Jim. We'll probably figure it out when we walk around.
Okay, so we have our third public hearing. See if Commissioner Stewart comes back.
Do you want to just take a quick break?
5-minute recess. All right, call this meeting back into order. For the record, Commissioner Romano is recusing himself from our next matter and is not at the dais, whatever. Dais. IWC 2019-06-269 Purdy Hill Road, a 25-unit age-restricted housing with associated improvements and conservation of existing building on property to a 2-bedroom home, Burr Corner, Beaverbrook LLC, Twombly. This is the opening of the public hearing.
Bill Carbone, Path Bjork and Associates, for the engineers for this project. I'm a professional engineer licensed in the state of Connecticut. This project is located on 10.2 acres at the corner of Purdy Hill and Cutler's Farm Road. This, if it seems familiar, this site was subject to a previous development. Previous development contained a loop road, one road coming in off of Cutler's Farm. It contained 15 single-family detached homes. They were all 2 bedrooms, and the existing house that's right here, which is part of this development, is a 3-bedroom house. These homes were to be built under the new ARR zone. This plan was approved by both the Wetlands Commission, the Planning and Zoning Commission, and these approvals have been recorded in the land records of the town. That's for this development. This current development is very similar, obviously the same site, but this house is the 25th unit. It will be converted from a 3-bedroom to 2-bedroom. There are now 24 new units proposed in this area, 3 units to a building. Again, they will be 2-family age-restricted housing. Similar to the last proposal, there will be one entrance coming in off of Cutler's Farm Road. There are 0.4 acres of wetlands back in here, which are contained totally within the existing lot in here. This is the regulated area through there. In the last proposal, the detention basin was in this area. Much of it, or portions of it, within the regulated area. The total slope of the wetlands in the previous proposal was about 8 feet from this wetlands here. There's a sliver of an off-site wetlands in there. In that area, the total slope was with about 7 feet. Now with the new proposal, the total slope will be at least 80 feet from this wetlands and from this wetlands. So we believe this proposed project will greatly reduce the impact on the wetlands. In the proposed activities, there was buildings and a driveway in the regulated area. In this proposal, the only activities will be subsurface septic systems located along this slope. There will be no above-ground structures or driveways within the regulated area. The detention basin has been moved to here, and as with the prior proposal, there is a pipe that's coming down these two neighbor properties across to Sheep Meadow Drive and then through existing facilities through here. These facilities will have to be upgraded, they'll be in the same location. All of this off-site work has been previously approved by the two commissions. So with this, as I said, there will be a great reduction in the impact or potential impact of the wetlands. It will be 30 feet away. It will be, as I said, limited to this. We received Scott's comments on this on Monday. So again, we couldn't meet the commission's submission deadline of last Wednesday. But we have prepared a written response to his comments.
I just wanted to clarify one thing too, that the last page of my comments is drainage, and just so you understand too, I mean, I want the commission should recognize that the comments are mostly on the drainage system, which is mostly out of the regulated area. But I do that so that you can get the information early on. When we get the P and Z, it's going to make it a whole lot easier. And then if there's any overlap with items such as the outfall and, you know, recognizing that the discharge does go down into the wetland area. That's what I try to do, Bill. I try to review your drainage calcs at this point. It may seem like a lot, but it gives you the opportunity to have the time to address these, so when we get the P and Z, it's a lot easier.
Which I have responded to all your comments on, for all items on here. Summarizing it rather than reading that 8-page letter, the salient points that are going to result in a change to any of our plans are that there's going to have to be dates added to 4 sheets. They were inadvertently left off. Again, that does not affect the project in any way, but it is a technicality. A copy of the old plan, this will be added to the set with a name change saying previously approved project. The commission will have to decide if a new wetlands evaluation is required, which is the same question Scott asked. The information will be the same and the impacts will be the same or less. The wetlands that we're dealing with are here and there. This is the old pond, the old building, and the driveway. This is the new plan, and as you can see, it's further away. The description of the wetlands will remain the same. That hasn't changed. So we believe that most likely it's not necessary because the previous plan was approved and the impacts are reduced.
So, let me ask you just a question. So, is this application, is this for a modification of an existing permit? Is that what you're asking for then?
No.
Oh.
This is a new application for a new project.
So what was the question to the commission about that?
Pardon?
That we were supposed to consider?
Whether if a new wetlands evaluation is necessary.
Oh.
I would like to make the record of the old application part of this, and that wetlands is, again, as the report, the evaluation is, we don't believe necessary. But again, that is the commission's decision. We will add LOD lines to the map. They were inadvertently left off. They will be located through this area at the downhill toe of these disturbance for the septic areas, and that will be changed. A silt fence will be located again at that LOD line. Details for the spillway will be modified, or we will create one to include an impervious area. That was Scott's suggestion. The calculations for the drainage for on-site and off-site are virtually the same as last time, but they were not included in the report. We will attach new drainage calculations to the engineering report, modified. These are the items that will be modified. They are minor and don't really influence the impact of the wetlands, to the wetlands. But I wanted to provide this report so you have time to review it. We will get you the modifications that I described here again by next Wednesday, so you have a week to consider it before your next meeting. This obviously would have to be postponed until the next meeting. Is there any questions?
Are you planning on planting the stormwater basin?
Yes. If you go to the set of plans, I don't have it, there is an LP, it's the landscaping plan for the entire site. There are plantings in the,
This was the original.
it's LP1.
I don't have that. I just have the
Reduce
just
site?
the reduced.
It still should be in there. In any case, to answer your question, yes, there's a detailed landscaping plan. There is extensive plantings around the banks of the detention basin, and the bottoms will be,
You have another set.
I'll
Good luck.
find it.
Okay.
and there are plantings on the bottom of the basin too, which are cattails and other wet plants that can tolerate wet feet. So yes, there is an extensive plan. This was prepared by Mr. Twombly, who has many years' experience in this field.
Is the area that's currently where the new septics are proposed to go, is that currently untouched? Or has that been cut down?
No,
or
it's
anything?
wooded.
It's still wooded?
It's still wooded.
Okay.
Granted, it may not be the best woods, but it's still wooded.
Because I see no plantings proposed for along those woods. I was wondering if there might be
Well, there-
some kind of I don't know, line of.
Right there, this area, there's a stone wall located right here. Beyond that stone wall, there is a wooded area that we are going to put the septic system in. There is another stone wall along here, and beyond that stone wall is wooded, and we are not touching it.
Can you depict the stone wall on the plan, or is it there already? That second stone wall that you're referring to?
It's on the plan.
It is on the plan. I remember seeing the first stone wall, but not the second one.
Second one is the property line.
Here's the first one. I don't see any second wall. I did have planted one.
The stone wall,
Sorry, I changed your drawing.
wow,
Just trying to confuse you.
where'd it go?
Well, you're showing the first wall there, I don't see the
I
second.
don't see the second wall either in any of the plans.
What you want to do is get the little hand up here, see that? And then you could just,
Here's the planting.
That changes scale.
well, now you're to the first, second, now you, here, let go for a second. Go to the third drawing, and then.
That's the off-site drainage.
Yeah, so what she's asking is, on this drawing anyway, you're showing the first wall, but not the second one.
No, this is the first stone
Excuse me,
wall.
I'm sorry. Folks, if you don't mind, sorry, thanks.
The first, let me just read
I
this.
think the second wall, Lois, is shown on their survey plan.
And it's essentially in this area.
Oh,
First stone wall is here. This is wooded from here to the second stone wall. And then actually there's,
I know there's a third stone wall that goes along the property line, right?
Is there a wall in between here? There's a wall here, and there's one there.
Yeah, there's a wall right down at the bottom down here,
Yeah.
which really isn't a stone wall. My name's Ken Twombly, I'm the owner. It's really stones that were pushed up when they were farming. So it's not really a wall, and neither is the one up closer to us a proper wall. It's sort of a lot of big boulders just pushed up, and there's a couple places where it was actually built as a stone wall, but poor example of a stone wall, really.
It's not a colonial stone wall, it's a more recent one. I'm
So
sorry,
the
let me
two,
read.
so the second wall that you're talking about is really on the border.
It's this line right in here,
So is your,
which goes on there.
okay, is your proposal to relocate the wall that is going to be removed and put that on the LOD line?
No, as shown on the landscape plan, we're removing about 700 feet of stone wall. Well, some of it is because there's houses in there, but some of it is because you can't have a stone wall within 50 feet of a
Right.
septic system. So we're gonna take a portion of that stone wall and reconstruct it along here and tying into the wall that's along there. And then, if you look at the landscape plan, the remainder of the wall is going to be used as landscaping features within the site itself.
So you didn't show that yet on the drawing though, right?
Which,
The relocating the wall
yes, it's on the landscape plan, and it clearly
on
says
the landscape.
to remove 700 feet, place it here or other landscape areas.
All right, so
The-
that definitely, so that's something that may be interesting, because that's definitely within the regulated activity. So that area here, right in here, that's, this is wooded?
It's wooded from this stone wall to that stone wall.
All right, so I guess what you should show on your plan then is what you're gonna clear out of there to get the vehicles in to build that wall?
Will be the same vehicles we use to build the septic system.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is this, see this right here? This is wooded. So
Yes.
you need to show on the plan what you're clearing out of there to get down in there
Yeah.
to build a wall. 'cause that-
Yes,
that'll be-
with adding the LOD line that you had suggested,
Yeah,
we will show I think you called it a proposed tree line or proposed something, but we will, down to wherever we have to clear, we will leave the trees on the other side. Now, we're not gonna, there was a suggestion of putting in shrubs downhill of it. Well, we're not gonna take trees out to put shrubs in. We're not gonna, that just doesn't make sense. So the toe slope, or not the toe slope, the LOD line will be the limits of clearing, and that's the minimum amount that we need to construct the septic systems. Now, the trees will be removed in here because you don't want trees growing on or that near to a septic system. But,
So is it fair to say that building setback line?
yes,
I mean, that building setback line, keep going to the right. Yeah, that building setback line, why couldn't you hold that as your limited disturbance? If that enabled you to get septic in?
in general, that's true. I think there's some areas right in here where we can not take out areas that are within, like it would cut across here and we'd get some more. And
Because you're showing
why don't you
clearing.
go on the other plan, maybe it'll show it better.
I don't know if you have the landscape plan on there.
No,
No,
I
but he's
don't.
got the septic, at least. so
Yeah.
there-
See, for example, in this area, there's the setback line you were talking about, but we could also save this area in here.
It's really that corner where Barilli's name is, where you're showing on the landscape plan, you're cutting a swath through there, right up to the edge, basically, of the wetlands on the property line, to relocate that stone wall. My point is, why even bother relocating the stone wall in the wooded area where you have to rip out the trees and then you're gonna replant, you're proposing to replant and to put stone wall just for the stone wall. I don't know, I don't get it, if that's what you're disturbing that area for.
That's a good point. I think what we would most likely do is place the stone walls in there where there are trees. It's wooded, but they're relatively sparse or small. So for that length of this property line, we will do it to the extent possible without taking out trees.
It appears to me that there's 40 feet approximately from the boundary to the edge of the far right-hand septic system. You don't need all 40 feet of that, do you, to create that septic system?
No.
Okay, so to Jeff's point, he would like to see as much of that corner preserved, since that whole area isn't needed, to preserve as much of that, since it is bordering directly on that little finger of wetland, and to preserve as much of that as possible, rather than digging it up and replanting.
I guess if you show an
So-
LOD line, it'll help,
Yes, it will.
when you come back
Right,
in.
and that was-
So just one thing to remember, that these two reserve areas, well, they're partially in the upland review area. And in order to, meet the requirements of the health district, these are reserve areas, and they have to know that they can build them. And if they're in a wooded area that requires a future permit from the Wetlands Commission to clear, then they don't know that. So one of my comments that I always provide is that when they propose these reserve areas, they should be in areas where they're going to be clearing and disturbing so that it gets approved. And then when and if, hopefully they never have to, but when and if, or if they have to build these reserve areas, then they can merely come in and get an agent approval for it. And I know that they've got approval, they know that they've got approval, and they can qualify for initial approval by the health department. So you just want to be careful of that. The other option is you can look, can you move those two somewhere else, like above these, or to the side, or something like that? I don't know.
No, there's a separation between this system and this system that can't be stacked on top of each other unless there's a 50-foot separation between the two, so you provide for hydraulic capacity. So again, when we add the LOD line, it will come down from this stone wall
Yeah, go
beyond
pathway of
this,
water.
and then back up and snake around, but providing, giving us enough room to construct the reserve area and
Understood.
prime area.
Understood. I'm just talking about that corner. That corner does not need to be taken all the way down to its borders.
Yeah, you know what you could do too, though?
You see what I'm trying to say?
You could always approve it and get them, you could have them put a note on the drawing that you could have this kind of shaded out, put a note on the drawing that you're approving this for future installation of the septic system per agent approval. That might do it, because then the health department would have what they need to see that it qualifies, but yet they don't have to take the trees down, and you guys get the protection you want until such time it has to be done. And hopefully that never happens. So that's an option, I think, that would be good for everybody.
That's fine. Write it down.
Yes,
Get over that.
there are trees shown to be planted in that area. I think what we'll have to do is go out and see if that's warranted, or take them off the plan. If there's nothing there, then we will add those plants.
Okay, if there's nothing there, it makes total sense. Yes.
Right,
yeah.
but if
I
there
don't
is,
need to be
we'll remove
argumentative.
them. I
Right,
agree.
or you could add that note on there, and that I just, did you hear what, I don't know if you were doing something else, you heard
I
what I
was.
said?
No,
What I said was, if this is a
If it's a condition that allows it to be an agent approval in the future.
Right, you could put a condition there that says that, and not take the trees out now. That way, everybody gets what they want, and we don't have to take the trees out.
Fine, we'll put 2 LOD lines in there. The other question is, we were proposing to build a wall from there to there to mark the things. We'll have to, when we're out there evaluating the trees, we'll see if we can build that without causing any major disturbance to anything other than placing the rocks along that line.
Well, the kind of walls you already have are now fine. We call those farm walls, and they're just dumped rocks.
Right,
That's
well,
fine.
if the trees are so thick we can't even dump the rocks, we won't do that.
Right, understood, too.
Yeah, there's already rocks there along that edge. And the only thing that I was proposing in my landscape plan is to add a few more rocks in there.
Okay.
And then I was gonna put in a few evergreens on that side, just to get some buffering from blueberry.
Sounds great.
If you go out and you look and there's, it's sparsely vegetated or something,
It's
that's
very,
fine to add.
yeah, there's not much vegetation.
I just wasn't sure if you were going and clearing a forested area just to.
Right.
No.
Just to put a stone wall or shrubs, no, we don't propose that.
Yeah, and then, like Bill said, on that reserved area, my thoughts is to actually clear right up just past that and then bring it, snake around through there so that the vegetation, you can see it, but it's not a delineated line right up the road. And then that would answer the question of if we ever had to go into a reserve area, then there would be no trees there if we do it right now. There's not many trees there anyways, it's all been cut. We cut all of that off like 10 years ago, so all the trees now are just little saplings in there.
Okay. You mentioned common areas in one of the reports. Is this going to be, not that it's, I just was curious where your common areas will be? Where would I see that?
What was that?
That your common areas,
Well-
you just, I didn't know if that was part of where
It's a
the.
legal thing. The people will own the units within the building. Everything else is a common area,
I see.
like a condominium.
Okay. I didn't know if you were designating a little park or something.
Well,
you
I
know,
mean, we do have
within it.
green areas here and around the perimeter, but the common area is anything that's not a building. Even the roads are a common area because, as with a condominium, they're owned by everybody.
Right, okay. Are these the same size units? They appear to be smaller individual units than you were originally proposing?
I
Is
don't
that-
have the square footage. They are all 2 bedrooms. They were all 2 bedrooms, and they're continuing that. These are 2-story, right? And the others were 1-story, so
Okay.
I would
Oh, I
assume
see.
they're essentially the same and 2 bedrooms.
Okay.
Like maybe up to 2,000, but probably not.
Okay. I think that was all I had.
Well, if there's no other questions, I'll
Any other questions for the commission for now? Exhibits, please, ma'am.
Thank you.
Exhibit 1, abutters receipts. Exhibit 2 was map S3 underground utility, document dated May 9th, 2016, revision date February 11th, 2019. Exhibit 3 was a letter to Scott Schatzline from Nick Clark, document dated March 6th, 2019. Exhibit 4 was a map S-1 titled Site Plan by Scott Bajorkin, document dated May 9th, 2016. Revision date June 29th, 2017. Number 5 were town engineer comments by Scott Schatzline dated March 11th, 2019. Exhibit 6 was the bond estimation form by Scott Schatzline dated March 11th, 2019. And Exhibit 7 is response to town engineer comments by both Harborne staff of Jorkland dated March 13th, 2019.
Thank you. Okay, as this is a public hearing, I'll open up the public comment. Is there anybody in attendance tonight that would like to speak in favor of this application? You could start on your way if you like. Anybody in opposition? Come on down. What's that? Yeah. Just your name and address for the record, ma'am, please, if you don't mind.
Noreen McElhoney, 88 Cutler's Farm Road.
Thank you.
My concern is that the reserves are in the wetland setbacks. We all live downhill on Cutler's Farm, and there's wetlands all behind us, and I'm concerned with if and when those reserves happen to be used, that the pollution from the leaching septics could drain down. We are on wells. We have no access to any other water supply. Some of us down that end have shallow wells. And where that pipe from this retention, the thing that's going back, the blue line that was on the thing, goes right into some people's backyards who already get flooded because of the wetlands and stuff in there. And that would add to the wetland problem.
That was the pipe down into the structure on the other, they showed before?
That blue line that was draining, that one right there, going right down. That is all wetlands in there. There is a stream or brook that runs behind my house that is fed by all the wetlands, and that's another concern I have with this being developed, that all that water will drain down. And that retention pond is up higher than the house on the next street on Sheep's Meadow. And how is the water going to stay in the retention pond when the ground drops off downhill? Those are my concerns.
Thank you. Anybody else would like to make a comment in opposition? Sir?
Joe Gianella, 26 Blueberry Hill Road. So that corner you guys were talking about kind of is right, I'm right behind that. So that wooded area, although there's not a lot of trees, there's enough trees where there's a ton of deer right behind there that live. So my question is, because with that wooded area, are you going to be cutting down that wooded area and I'm going to have a stone, so you're going to keep the wooded area back there?
Yes. Well, we have to answer at the end.
Okay.
They'll have the opportunity to respond to you once everybody has a chance
Okay,
to
so
speak.
that's kind
Thank
of
you.
my question too.
Appreciate it, sir. Anybody else? Seeing none, we give the applicant an opportunity to respond, should they choose.
The first person was speaking to the septic areas in here that are located here. They are, you can see the contours in here that delimit the ends of it. So we are 100 feet, give or take, this is the 100-foot setback line in here, maybe 80 feet from the property line. So there is more than sufficient renovation areas for the septic systems by our property line. There is an extensive area from our property line to Blueberry Hill. The water from this site, from about in this area, flows to Blueberry Hill now. That's the overland flow, not the septic. So there is a significant amount of water that's going that way. We are taking that out and piping it down the hill through the blue line. So the septic area will be drier than what it was before because we've reduced the runoff in that direction. The reserve areas are well beyond anything required by the health code, so we don't believe that there would be a problem in that area. Now, dealing with the blue pipe, it goes through an easement by these two property owners and goes into an existing drainage system again, into an extensive wetlands in this area. Currently, the water coming off, again, this area goes down, enters into the Blueberry Hill drainage system, and enters that same wetland stream complex about 500 feet above where we have it now. So we're not changing the flow because of detention to this whole wetlands complex through there. It gets there now, it'll get there in the future, but taking a different route. Speaking to the detention basin, she was concerned about how it's not going to come down here. Well, the detention berm will be made of a fill material, and it will be compacted so that it does not percolate water. The only place that we will get percolation will be the bottom of the pond. The side walls are a large impervious surface. And in fact, Scott has requested a detail for this, adding an impermeable barrier through there to further reduce it. So this, with the compaction that is required and specified on the plans, we don't feel that there's any potential impact to the house here or here. So again, we don't feel that it's going to be a problem. The trees we've gone over several times about in this area that we will remove whatever is not good and replace it with the plantings as shown on the landscaping plan. Again, there will be an improvement or no change depending on which is warranted for this whole, actually the whole corridor along here, and in particular that area. So again, I don't think those should be major concerns, and it will have to be done, the plantings anyhow, in the field, and specifically saying, put a tree here, don't take that one out, that type of thing. As with the previous hearings tonight, we will come back by next Wednesday. You have our report. We will change the plans accordingly to match the comments that are on here by next Wednesday, so you have a week before the next hearing. So we're asking for a continuance.
Thank you.
I have
Okay,
one.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Carbone. In your list of things to bring back,
Yes.
I'm requesting, because you brought up a very good point. Can you give us a watershed map to the wetlands on site, pre and post-construction, to see how much of that local watershed, because it looks like it's pretty significant, is being eliminated from draining to that wetland and being diverted to a different watershed?
In the engineering report, we have both a pre and post map showing the watersheds. The actual,
Was that submitted as the application?
Yeah, it's part of the,
I don't think I have. I have
You didn't
nothing
get
in this
it, did you?
application.
Did you get this one? This big fat one?
Maybe.
now,
We weren't here.
No,
It's
it's
before my
here
time.
now. Yeah,
no, that's in the,
it's here now in this application.
it's in the report. The,
I'll get a copy and I'll look at it
If you
then.
stop by tonight.
I say it's the on-site drainage areas, but the high point of this watershed is right along here. So what's going that way and what's shown on our maps is pretty much it. There's no flow coming across either of these
No,
sites.
just the on-site, yeah,
Yeah.
on-site and then what's being changed.
But
So
the
I'll look
on-site
at
is
the
also
report.
pretty much the total.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, so for those in attendance, if this hearing will be, we've requested some additional information, and this will be continued to our next meeting, which is March the 27th, right? 27th? So not next Wednesday, the following Wednesday.
Correct.
So there'll be further information provided to us then. Okay, hearing continued. All right. That concludes our regulated activities for the evening. Moving on to enforcement. Notice of violation discussion, IWV 2019-02, 37 Cold Spring Road, Cohen, shed possibly located in Town of Monroe, open space.
I don't know what I'm supposed to do, to be honest.
You can hang on right
Yeah, well,
there, just 1 second.
Thanks.
We'll help you.
Okay.
Just put your hands behind your back for the handcuffs.
We
Oh.
don't bite.
Let's let the
That's
room
what's-
clear a little bit.
Yeah, give me a second to clear up.
Oh, my God. It's 1,000 degrees. Either that or I've scarlet fever.
Up there, yeah, I think I do too.
Yeah.
I'm gonna bring a
The
fan.
record will reflect that Commissioner Romano is rejoining at whatever time this is. 9:54.
All right, so which one?
Okay, so,
Okay, if you would start with just your name and address for the record.
Alyssa Cohen, 37 Cold Spring.
And Tim Cohen, her husband.
so what happened, just so you understand, what the process is that we get a call, complaint, concern, whatever. So we check it out, and we develop a report, if you will, on what the issue is and how it can get resolved or whatever. So I take that report and I give it to the commissioners and go over it with the commissioners at a previous meeting during deliberation. And they advise to notify you, and at this point, you get a notice of violation in the mail. It just says, come to the commission. And it's kind of an informal process at this point. And what it does is it gives you the opportunity to just talk to the commission about what the conditions are there. And they get information from you, you get information from them. And the goal of this evening is to get a clear pathway to the process that will be used to resolve the issue. If there's a resolution that's even needed, sometimes there isn't a resolution. So that's pretty much where we are. I'm gonna go through real quickly the report, and you must have gotten a copy of this already, correct?
Yeah, in the weirdest way possible, because I never actually got the certified mail. Bob got my
Oh, you
certified
didn't get
mail,
the
but I was
certified.
here and they gave me a copy of it, so yes, I did receive
Okay,
it.
so you got it. That's important.
Yeah.
Because I believe the report goes out separately from the notice, so you got both.
Maybe.
You got the notice of violation and this report with the sketch in it, did you get that?
So I have,
Well, I'm gonna go over it.
yeah,
now.
okay.
So,
I have something similar, but I don't think I have that.
okay, so if you're missing anything, you can, at any point, you can call us and you can get whatever. it is. All right, so here's the report. The whole thing started, I guess, with the tree warden, and so we became aware of it. So we go out and we look, and we came up with the fact that there's a unpermitted shed located in the upland review area. The upland review area is, the commission regulates wetlands, and in regulating wetlands, in protecting wetlands, they regulate everything within 100 feet of wetlands, just to make sure that whatever you do, like putting in a new shed, something like that, doesn't impact the wetland. So what we discovered was there's a shed within that regulated area that was put in circa 1990 that doesn't have a permit. There's a clearing within the 100-foot upland review area. There's clearing and a structure located on the Town of Monroe open space property, which at the time appeared as though it was originating from your property. And clearing outside the 100-foot upland review area on the Town of Monroe open space property. Those are what the issues are. There's you're 37, right?
Mm-hmm, 37.
Yeah, it goes on to talk about 47 as well, because they're kind of connected. Then this sketch was done, which shows this property on the end of the.
No,
No,
the
you're
one
this
above it,
one.
yeah.
Okay, so I thought there was a better shot than this in this one, but, okay. So here is the pinkish purple area is the area that has been encroached upon into the town property. And it's almost like I guess you use the same drawing for both. But the shed, I don't know where the shed is.
It's in that.
It's in this
purple
area.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's it right
It's
there.
the shaded area there.
Yeah, okay, so that's, all right, so the unpermitted shed, there it is. And clearing within the upland review area. And then the rest of it is stuff on the other property. But, so that's what we see as the issue. And then beyond that, let me see if there's any pictures. All right, so there's the shed, I guess. And here's the cleared area that goes off the property. There's a pile of wood chips or leaves that are in there. Obviously, they're not on your property, but it looks like there's a pathway from your property that leads to it. And
No, that's off the
That's not
dead end.
us. That's,
all right, that's the neighbor?
yeah.
That's the
Yeah,
dead end.
okay, sorry about that. And then there's a few aerials that show the house and the.
You can see the little square there is the,
Right here?
the shed, just
No,
below the mouse.
yeah, right
Right
there.
there.
There you
Yep, okay. So there are some trees that overhang the area. All right, so that's it. That's what we're dealing with, and you guys can take it over and talk to the commission about it.
Okay, so basically, we bought this house a year and a half ago, and nothing in our documents shows a shed. There's like aerial shots where it shows it off the property line, but there's nothing that we bought this shed, and the shed is basically as old as I am, so
Yeah,
I
the
didn't put it
shed's-
there.
And the shed's not on your technically it's not on.
It's not on my property, right?
Correct.
I think,
using the shed?
no.
So it's not your shed?
And it's falling apart.
So it's not your
Right.
shed?
Right.
I like that argument.
It-
Not my shed, I didn't buy any shed.
I didn't buy the shed, it
It's
didn't.
the town's shed.
It is like becoming a part of the swamp, like the bottom is rotting out and it's not really a usable shed. And then the clearing in the yellow there, like that was cleared when we bought it.
Yeah, so I'm just maintaining it and mowing it. I can stop mowing it, but I really
Well,
don't want to do that
remember-
because it'll look terrible.
Yeah, one thing to remember is that if there's for lack of a better word, violation, and you buy a property with the violation, then you end up owning the violation.
Right, but what I'm saying is it's not in any of the documents that we bought it.
Well, no, it doesn't, and again, it's buyer beware. If you have a violation that you buy into, it becomes your violation. But the commission will understand that, if you tell them that, you bought it and you didn't do it, that puts you in a different light. But I'm just saying that it ends up being let me zoom in here and see.
So that's town property?
Yeah, that's town open space.
Well, the area.
The orange line is the property
Here's the
line.
orange line. So you're mowing this?
Yeah, so I can stop mowing it, but I think it would look disgusting.
Well.
Someone had already
let me ask
cleared
you a
it
question.
previously.
Is there another access, is the only way to get to that shed through your property?
I mean, you can.
I mean,
walk
without
through the
cutting
woods.
down trees, is there any way to get that shed in there without going
Yeah,
through
there's a
your
lot
property?
of room to walk around in those woods,
I
but
walk around, but to actually take a shed and drop it, well, it might have been built there, so you only have the carried materials, but.
It was built there.
It was built there.
yeah.
Three customers ago.
Right. So there was multiple.
There's no
like-
foundation, is there?
No, there's
I don't
So
multiple
the easiest thing
sales.
for,
It's
that
on
we're
rocks.
probably gonna be requesting is just remove it.
Right.
If there's no foundation, that doesn't,
But
you
why is
gotta,
it,
but you
might
gotta
not be
get
their
it out of
responsible,
there.
maybe the public works has to come and move it, it's on town property.
Well, this is what I'm going to get at. I heard today your response, and if there's a clear, if there's proof or clear, for instance, if the shed had stuff in it, and it was their stuff, then I think the town would definitely go to them and say, you know, they need to remove the shed because they're encroaching on our property. You know, I can understand if they come and they say, well, we bought the property, there was a shed out in the woods, it's not on our property, we never used it. It does present a little bit of a legal issue. I
Yeah,
can
then
find
you
out
would-
about it.
You would say, if that was another property owner, you would go after that other property owner and say, guess what?
Well, no,
It's on your property, you have to get rid of it.
Yeah, it's not on the other property owner's property, it's town property.
Well, that's what I mean,
But that's
you're
what
the
he's
other
saying.
property owner.
Right, we would go to the
Yeah.
property owner,
So-
so the town is a property owner, that's who we
So,
have to go to.
as I was saying, that if there's clear evidence that they are encroaching, then yes, we would have them remove it. I think in this case, I can talk to Public Works, and I guess the solution is for Public Works to go out and remove the shed.
So it should make a mention that the only reason that this all came about is because I called, because the area under the yellow, which is definitely Town Works, a tree fell, broke in half, and is half up and half in the road. I called about that, and it never got taken care of.
Okay. All right.
So I really don't want Public Works to come out again.
All right, so what the issue here
Don't ever come
is
over.
that-
I know, yeah, I'm not
All
mowing
right,
the lawn
all right.
anymore, I'm not calling about down trees.
Okay, so the issue right here is that it is town property, so you do not have permission to be cutting it or maintaining it. And so you need to stop that. Clear
that's gonna look so awful.
encroachment on town or open space. I'm trying to find out, the wetlands.
Now, are the wood chips on the town property or their property?
Wetlands are here.
That's the town property, that's that other purple.
So this area here is not even under this commission's jurisdiction because their line stops here. This is town land, and so it's just, you're encroaching on the town property.
Okay.
And so you have to cease that. And typically what happens is you would put, we'd ask you to put something along the property line there to kind of discourage that a little bit, maybe a couple of plantings or a couple of bushes or something.
Okay.
And this area would be left to do whatever, you know.
Naturalize.
Naturalize.
Open space.
The problem with that is, you know, hopefully there's not, if it's grass, it's probably not gonna get invasives because it's got a grass cover, so it's not like a lot of seeds will take root.
It is worth noting that there's a lot of vines that are growing, like, all up the trees there.
Yeah, okay.
So, like, that could be part of the reason why the one tree went down, is that a vine was killing it for most of its life.
Yeah, what are the
And
vines,
so-
do you know?
They're like red, like the,
Grapevine.
yeah, they might be a.
They're
type of
shedding, the bark
grapevine.
is shedding off, kind of?
Yeah, they grow to the point where it starts killing the bark along with.
Well, the woody part of the vine is red colored, you're saying?
Basically, yeah, like right under the brown is red.
Do you recognize poison ivy if you see it?
Could be poison ivy or poison oak, don't
It's
touch.
certainly not poison ivy yet, because I've touched it. Like,
Okay,
it's
okay.
Is it-
not.
is it-
That's
are
what
they
I was
like
thinking, yeah.
growing into the
Red
bark of the
berries?
tree?
Yeah.
Or is it, I don't know.
All right, so what, you need to come into the office, and we need to find out if it is, it's open space, and open space has different restrictions. So we can look up and find out what restrictions are on that property, and then we could, yeah, I don't know if you're, I don't know exactly what it's easy when the resolution involves the commission, because the commission can decide how they want it restored, and it gets restored. If it's the town and open space, it's a problem because there's not a commission that regulates that, it's just the town. In some ways, that's better because the town probably isn't gonna be as interested in planting it to restore it. And the most important part of it is just getting you off the land, because you don't, you know, you're allowed to go on the land, it's open space, but you're not allowed to maintain it.
Mm-hmm.
If you are interested in restoring it so that you don't have to look at something bad, you can also get involved that way as well.
Okay.
So I guess you'd have to come into the office and talk to the zoning office and talk to the tree warden about it. You could probably talk about that tree at the same time.
Yeah, get that tree worked out.
Scott, can we as a commission write a letter to the Public Works asking them to remove that shed and that pile of wood chips? Because it's in an upland review area on the town property?
You can, yes, you absolutely can.
'Cause I think that's the solution here. And maybe the Public Works at the same time will bring a couple boulders over and put a line there so that, on the edge of the yellow, on their property line. At the same time, especially if they grant them access to get to that shed instead of cutting down trees. So maybe we can make some kind of a resolution to the town and present it to the Public Works and let them deal with the whole thing.
Yeah, I can pursue that. So this is kind of unique, this is the first time I've seen
Yeah,
this.
So it only happened to me, just for the
Yeah,
record.
because clearly,
Not just you.
clearly it was, well, you can't prove it was the property owner that lived in your house, but it certainly
Right.
looks that way, that they had the pathway in and did that. And you inherit violations, but you only inherit violations on your
On,
property.
right, that's,
So,
So we inherited.
We inherited.
yeah, so I guess I'll
Yeah,
get more
yeah.
information about it, and we'll check into
So, yeah.
Public Works and see what we can do.
Thanks for coming in.
yeah, thank you guys, really.
So,
I'm
we'll
sure
be,
this-
My bedtime was an hour ago, so.
You and me both.
Gets it, love
You and me both.
Yeah, no one gets that kind of love.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
Have
you.
a good night.
Good luck with that tree.
I just hope it doesn't land in my driveway. Fingers crossed.
All right, IWV 2019-03, 48 Cold Spring Road, Saban, structure located within town of Monroe space.
Can we just deal with that?
No, that was 37, this is the neighbor, 48.
okay, are you guys 48?
That's me.
That's you.
Yeah. Just for the record, that shed was built in the woods 20 years ago by the guy that lived there.
But that's what I thought.
Yeah.
It's got the same side.
He worked at Stevens and Lumber, he brought all the old wood home. You could find
And when
it.
did he build it?
When?
40 years ago?
20 years ago.
20, okay, so, it's,
And it's rotten, it's shot.
all right. So, you heard the drill.
Yeah, I know all the
Same-
drill.
Same drill. In your case, there's an unpermitted shed, a hoop structure located in the 100-foot upland review area. There's an unapproved clearing within the 100-foot upland review area. There's unpermitted driveway, storage, and construction equipment within the 100-foot upland review area. Construction of a 3-car garage not in the location or configuration as shown in the plan that was the permit. Unpermitted trampoline, which I've heard has been removed. Garden and debris, which is minor, but it's there within the 100-foot upland review area. Unpermitted, the trampoline, I skipped ahead. Garden debris, and clearing outside the 100-foot review area on the town of Monroe open space.
Okay.
So here is the sketch of your property, and let's blow it up a little bit.
Now, as far as those wood chips are going at the dead end, I put them there.
Yeah, this pile here.
Yeah, it was right off, because in the road, where we get these windstorms, I built a lot of the houses on the street 38, 40 years ago, and every storm, trees come down. There's branches left down at the dead end. I take them and I throw them in the woods, in a pile, 3 different piles that I started. And then after that, after so many years, the pile kept getting bigger, so I said, let me put some wood chips on there. I had some wood chips dumped last year that I was going to use. And there was something here in the leaves too that somebody's been dumping down there. Nobody's been dumping down there. That was the leaves that come off the dead end. I blow them back in the woods. Because there's
Clarification question?
Sure.
You're saying that you put wood chips on top of the brush to hide it?
Yeah.
Oh, so
Well-
it's not a pile of wood chips dumped out of like a chip truck?
Yeah, it is. On top of the brush that was there.
On top of the brush.
3 piles that I put there, I just said, put them on top of this, because I said, we've got to look a little bit better than looking at piles of brush. And I didn't want to go in the woods with them, because it just too much.
Okay, so that's
Okay.
what that is.
Uh-huh.
And then, this is the town, and that's on the town open space. Because this is the property line for the town open space. And then
Right.
your parcel is here. So-
Right.
So now we come down into this area where your parcel is, and this is the garage. That's a different configuration than was originally approved. There's all construction material and things stacked behind it. Looks like it's part of your construction business, which is a separate zoning issue as well.
No, that's just, I got it there, I've been using it, and I'm selling it. I'm retired, I'm all done.
And then this is the encroachment into the town right-of-way
Right.
with the unpermitted hoop structure, asphalt, and clearing within the upland review area, all this area. This here is the clearing encroachment on the town open space, and then this area here is the unpermitted structure, clearing, and debris storage within the upland review area. Is right here. So that's all the.
Any trees that have been cut down there, like for instance, just this week alone, 3 more trees come down right on the property line on the side of my driveways. I mean, trees like that. And trees that have looked like they've been cut, those are the trees that fell, and I cut them maybe about this high, and I dragged them in the woods. It's the only trees I've ever cut around there, you know? As far as, what else?
All right, so you guys can.
All right, so clearly that stuff has to come out of the town
Mhm.
open space.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to kind of put it back the way it was before that stuff went in there, right? So how are we gonna accomplish that?
When you say, the stuff,
Well, the garage isn't as permitted. There's.
the garage was as permitted. I don't know where they got that from, the plan. I didn't do anything.
Okay, so what you need to do
Mhm.
is you need to come into the town hall
Mhm.
and bring your documentation, because we don't have that in our file. We approved the garage, and what's there is not what we approved. So that's different. The construction, this stuff that you're selling or getting rid of, none of that is approved. That's all items that you have no approval for that. So all of that.
Well, the only thing that's there is a machine and the two sheds. Well, one is a tent and the other's a
Right,
shed.
and this might be one where the commission might want to go out and look at, so you get appreciation for it, and understand what's here, because this is all in your upland review area.
What does that mean, upland review? I don't know.
The wetlands, this shaded area right here,
Uh-huh.
this greenish blue shaded area, that is wetlands. That is what this commission is charged with protecting. Everything within 100 feet of that wetland, this dashed line, everything to the right of this dashed line is regulated area by this commission. Everything to the bottom, the bottom of the sheet here, beyond this orange line, is the town of Monroe's property, and you don't belong on it. Nothing belongs on that other than just natural growth. So this process involves the Wetlands Commission regulating this area, upland review area. So this purple area here and the purplish pink area here are areas that are being encroached upon and that you don't have permits for, and that somehow you need to come up with a way to resolve that. This yellow area and this pink area, they don't involve this commission specifically, but they involve the town of Monroe, and those areas.
Yes, it does. Yes, that's in our URA.
The yellow not, but the purple.
Oh, I'm sorry, there's another URA there, I'm sorry. Just the yellow.
Right.
And then this area, thanks for correcting that, Ms. Hill. And then this area here, yes, it is the commission. So we're gonna treat the whole thing by the commission, I think, would be the way to do it. So, again, the purpose of this tonight is to come up with, really to get an answer from the commission after they talk, hearing what you have to say, answering some of their questions. Coming up with a process. They need to come up with a process that they can relay to you as to how they want you to proceed with resolving this issue, if they want it resolved.
Sure.
Okay? So then, I'll leave it up to the commission.
Well, one question I have is, the garage there, the barn, whatever you wanna call it, is not where it was permitted, but is it still within the building envelope of the property? Is it over setback lines?
No.
Or do you not know
I
that?
don't know the answer to that, I don't think it is.
According to
Well,
this
the-
GIS, the corner of it is on town property.
A big barn, not one of these little.
Not the
No, I'm
shed.
talking about the big barn. If you look at the very corner, look at your picture.
There's
The
a
orange
little
line goes right through the corner, the back corner.
That's a little shed, I'm talking about the big one.
No, I am talking about the big one, the big
Really?
purple
That
one,
big,
yeah.
that purple one up there.
Yeah, see, right here. See that orange line goes right through the corner of that
Oh, yeah,
building.
but that's not the building, that's the back.
That's not
of
the,
it.
here's
No,
a
that's
asphalt
part of
on
that's
that.
part of what he
That's
cleared.
not
That's the
the
building,
building?
that's
No, that's
asphalt.
part of the clearing that he
It's
wasn't
right.
supposed to be doing.
I blew it up here for you.
I apologize, then.
So
I
there's
was- I was
asphalt.
looking at those buildings.
So basically, what they're asking you, behind your garage, barn, whatever, all that stuff's gotta come out. You gotta remove all the construction equipment, any supplies,
No
any
supplies.
sheds, all that stuff's gotta come out.
And any asphalt.
And it's supposed to be restored back to natural vegetation too, because you cleared it.
I mean, I think it's fair to say we should be able to see an overlay of how far off the permit he went with the garage to see if it's a concern, right? Existing
Let me see
versus
if I have
proposed.
that.
And then,
I don't think
obviously,
I-
if there was no asphalt allowed within that area, take that out.
We don't copy
He
that.
didn't pave back there.
No.
Was that asphalt?
What was the asphalt?
Oh, just stone, asphalt's on the
Stone?
side, you can see it's on the
Yeah.
side, okay.
Millions?
Oh, that's not even in, oh, it is.
Yeah, but it's so far up, you can't really see what's there, so. What's down in that?
In that picture, what are those black things?
Shade?
Are those other hoop houses? The black covers on them?
Those are the hoop houses, hoop sheds.
But they look white in another picture.
Okay, so the permit that we have for the garage is for a 39 by 24 rectangular garage, three-car garage. 29 by 24 by 39, and that is nowhere near 24 by 39. It's a,
Garage is 30 by 40.
yeah, so it's a different size. It's a different, instead of a rectangle
I thought
this
that
way,
was-
it's a square, more square boxy.
But the same size or smaller?
It's bigger than what was permitted.
6 feet bigger.
Okay.
So, probably wouldn't get too hung up on the structure itself, especially if the structure is compliant with the setback lines. They did have, again, they had a permit to put a garage in, it just doesn't
Yeah.
quite match the footprint. But,
The big
this is
issue
a-
being
this
the
is a
hoop.
good, great picture, because it shows you the limits of this is pavement back here, right?
Gravel.
Or,
You said it was gravel.
well, gravel, and then you can see the machine back there. And I don't know when this was taken and how it compares to what's there now, but you can definitely see the stuff that's back there. I was just curious.
Okay.
I guess they didn't go
Huh?
up. I was thinking there was a lot.
What's down lower, Scott? Just keep going down. And over towards the pool more.
That's
That's the.
topsoil, little pile of topsoil, a couple yards of
It's got a
topsoil
tarp on
that I
it.
covered.
Okay, so you know that that's town property, right?
Yeah.
And you know that that's also upland review area, so that's close enough to the wetlands where you can't
Mhm.
put any material in.
Okay.
Because that could change the, oh, and that's that thing I was,
That's the
That's
To
a
trampoline.
right?
trampoline, yeah.
but that's gone, you said already?
Yeah, that's gone.
Okay.
Insurance companies don't let you have them, yeah, anymore.
And I guess the regulated area even clips the corner of his garden there. And he's got this shed here. So how do you want him to proceed? Do you want a remediation submission?
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a form in the office. That's a remediation form. You fill that form out. It's like an application, but it's a little less formal.
Okay.
There is a fee associated with it. There is a reporting form that goes to the state of Connecticut as well. So you come in, you fill out that form. What the commission wants you to do is they want you to submit a plan that will show them how you're gonna restore it. Now, why don't we talk about that a little bit, so he has direction on what you're looking for. Give him an idea of what your expectations are for restoring this area.
I'll make one suggestion. If you're not going to need, well, obviously the structures have to go, but if you're not gonna need that gravel space going forward, I think it would look good if it was restored to grass. Right?
Well, the gravel's gotta get taken out anyway. It's
Yeah, the
inside
gravel's on town property.
Well, obviously anything on town property gotta go, but on his own property, if he's no longer gonna need it for his activities, if he's retired, I would like to see the whole thing restored, grass at least. That's the only thing that I'd have to say.
All right, so let's start up here. What do you want him to do? You want him to take out this pile of material?
I mean, I could smooth that out,
Yeah, if that's not a big issue for you to do, you got a machine?
Yeah.
I would say
I
that's
can do
good
that.
for us.
All right, so your plan is gonna show them how you're gaining access to the area. Once he takes out the wood chips and the branches, do you want him to do anything?
It's right in the center of the wetlands.
But this,
No, no,
I
but
don't want to direct him to do
I
more
know.
work on town property. The town has to give authorization to.
Well, and we could do that, but typically, the town will refer that to the commission if it's in a regulated area. The town's not all that up on restoring property. So what's happened, and I realize you're fairly new on this issue, but what's happened in the past is that the town has said to the commission, look, whatever you guys want, because there's an overlap in jurisdiction, whatever you guys want to restore your upland review area is, so far, has always been acceptable to the town. All right,
I have a
so-
question. At the cul-de-sac there, where's the property line, my property line?
Oops, sorry.
Is it that, on that side, where the wood chips are?
So the property line comes this way,
That's the orange line there?
Yeah.
Okay.
all right, and it follows this red line, which is roughly about 10 feet off of the paved cul-de-sac. So 10 feet of your lawn is really owned by the town, that's called
Right.
the right-of-way, and then it comes down this way.
Okay, that's right.
All right?
Yeah.
So to get back to where we were going with this, I don't think the commission wants to dictate what you present to them, but basically what they're looking for is a plan that will show restoring this area with some type of plantings, and showing the access in, how you're gonna get in there.
Wait a minute, that there?
Yes.
There's nothing done with that.
Well, you got a pile of wood chips there.
Well, no, I'm literally right where the property line is on the road.
Yeah,
10 foot in.
yeah.
That's where the wood chips are dumped. They're not dumped way back. They're right on the edge.
Well, we've got a pile back in here that extends, into the wetland.
No, there's not.
Well, okay, so that's.
It's all
something-
trees back.
No, I
We
don't know, in
gotta
the
go take a walk.
meantime, the commission may want to go out and look at this. And
Yeah.
that way, when he comes
Visually
in with
see
his plan, you'll have a better handle on that. So then, moving down to the yard here. So, what what they're looking for is that any structures in this area be removed.
Okay.
So all these structures, and trampolines have already gone, but these structures here, 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 this structure, those all need to be removed. Commission, what do you want to, what is this structure here?
That's a little shed for my wife's garden. That's-
For your garden, okay.
You just
Commission,
move
this is in the upland review area. It is.
Right on the edge.
Do you guys want to allow that through a agent approval?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
That's, yeah.
So, what you would do, you keep that shed, but you gotta get a permit for it. All right, the permit process for that is called an agent approval application. That's a separate application.
Okay.
So you can apply for that. That's administrative, and it doesn't even involve the commission.
Okay.
Now, as far as you take everything out of this area that's in the town property, and then I'm assuming the commission wants to see some type of a planting plan for that?
Definitely.
All right, so they want to see, and usually what you would do is you would go to somebody who's got expertise in this, and you would ask for a restoration plan. What should be planted in this area that would restore this back to a natural condition in such fashion that we're not going to be involved with invasive plant species and things like that. So this area here, you'd have to come up with some kind of plan for a restoration. And I'm also hearing that they want you to get rid of the gravel, processed stone, asphalt, whatever it is, get rid of anything stored in this area, and then do the same thing there. Restore it with, I heard grass. Is that okay with you guys, or you want to see plantings there, or what's that?
Well, you can't let stuff, he's gotta be able to maintain around the back of the barn.
Yep, okay.
But I think maybe too, and I know it's not exactly what we do, but normally, maybe we should have them put the split rail fence on the town property line with the markers,
Right here.
just as a delineation.
Because if
Even though
you're,
it's
if you're
not-
planning on selling it, then the next person's probably gonna start redoing it again. As soon as you fix it, they're just gonna wreck it again, so you're probably gonna have to put a markers in there.
So before you jump ahead, this area back here, is the commission all together with that area just being seeded and left alone? Or do you want partially seeded and planted? What's your thoughts on it?
I'm happy with seating.
As long as it gets the stone and
As
asphalt
long as
out.
the town line is demarcated. That's the part
Okay.
that upsets me the most, is
All
that
right.
the town property.
So this, they can accept, and then so, and this line, what she's talking about is this line right here, the town property, the end, your property line and the town property. They're asking for some type of fencing on that line. And then on the fencing would be markers. We have the markers available in the office for like $1.50. And you would attach the markers to the pole posts every 50
Do
feet
we
or
have
so.
town property markers? 'Cause it's more
No,
than
no, it just
our-
says, but it's what, it's your
It says
review,
town of
so
Monroe,
they can
though.
put your markers there.
Yeah, I know, but
Is
it's
it
still.
blue line there, water?
That's the wetland.
Yes.
Okay.
It's not
Oh, no, that.
water per se.
So it's not a brook or anything?
Wetlands are
No,
classified.
the
Blue
Yeah.
squiggly line.
The little blue squiggly line is a brook. It's
Yeah.
supposed to be there.
Although it's not there, it's down further.
Well, at one time it was there. and
Yeah,
If it rains enough, it's gonna,
It's gonna be
Yeah.
there.
it's just gonna start it again, you know.
yeah.
All right, so you need to come up with some kind of fencing or barrier that runs along the property line. And then
It can be a
you get-
split rail fence. It
And
can
that
be-
needs to have markers, and the reason we're explaining this to you is, this all needs to be put on the plan.
Yeah.
So whoever you get to do your plan, you can relay that information and then tell them to come to the office, and I can help explain as well.
Okay.
So that they put on there what you need to put on.
Yeah, I'm also gonna have that surveyed too before I,
You're gonna have to have it surveyed so you know where
'cause
the
I gotta,
property line is.
yeah, I know that, I think I know where they are, but, you know, that was
Yeah.
done 40
So
years
that,
ago.
that'll be part of it too. So that's why you need to go to a surveyor, engineer
Mm-hmm.
to prepare this plan for you. All right, so I think he has direction on what he needs to do. Last thing is, how much time you wanna give him to do that? Do you have the,
Well, how much time do you think you're gonna need to get this together? Plan and
Maybe 6 months.
Oh, it's gonna have to be quicker than that.
6 months.
A plan at least, not necessarily finished, but the
A
plan
plan.
in our hands.
Oh,
Not,
plan.
not to do the work.
Oh, plan.
Yeah.
Oh,
Just to
okay.
get it,
45 days? So they come back in front of us with a plan, so we can
6
approve
weeks?
it, and then give you another timeline for getting it
Gotcha.
done, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
60 days, what's
60 days?
45 or 60?
60 days?
60, I agree.
Whatever, 2 months.
60
days,
sounds
it
fine.
brings
You
us
okay
to
with
the end.
60 days, sir?
2 months.
Okay.
2 months, whatever.
60 days it is.
Meeting is.
And I would hire a surveyor to do that?
We can do the survey.
The survey, I mean, but
Survey's
as
got
far,
to do survey, but
what
you
do I
got
gotta get?
landscape.
Landscape architect?
Architect, yeah. Because most landscape architects will know that, okay, I gotta do he's gonna be doing a remediation plan to plantings, trees, whatever, to restore the area that you've already.
Mhm.
We're doing, side note, I thought we were setting something up where homeowners can do it on their own. You never
He
got that
is,
far?
but he has to start the process.
Okay.
We just
Okay,
need
Scott,
to jump.
do you have an A, do you have a
Give me a
survey
second.
from when the barn, before you put the barn, did you get an A2 before you got the permit for the barn? Because the barn was only about within the past 10 years, right?
No.
Barn was built in '08.
Oh, wait, so 11 years ago, did you have an A2 survey?
No, I had the markers back then. I found them, but
No,
now I can't find them
Okay.
it
anymore.
was a napkin print
Gotcha,
at
okay.
best.
I was gonna say, it was half of
Okay.
that.
All right.
Hold on a second, hold on.
Just,
Um,
let me just get on some contact
Oh,
information for
sure.
you. Okay, if you can put your name and a number, we can reach you at an email.
Like a record. I gotta be-
Yeah, one more thing.
Is that my address?
Okay, so,
No, we don't.
so as far as the leaf pile and all that stuff,
Yeah.
that, the surveyor can locate that, so you know where it is, where the wood chips and so, you know, it'll go on the plan in the proper place. You know, you're saying it's closer to the road, and so be it, if it is, then it'll.
I hardly have to go off the road to get to it.
Okay, all right, so that hopefully will get shown there. All right, so I've got, let me finish.
Okay, is there a telephone number?
Yeah.
Or so?
That's a cell number.
Okay, thanks so much.
Great.
Okay, so I've got that you're gonna remove everything from the open space, remove everything from behind the barn and seed it. You're gonna provide a planting plan for restoring the open space, fencing along the property line and open space line, markers every 50 feet on center along the fence, keep the garden shed but get an agent approval for it, confirm acceptance and permit for the garage from building department / zoning department. Remove leaf pile or wood chip pile and show access and restoration planting. Did I get everything?
Yeah.
And the deadline is
For the
60
days.
days. 60 days.
60 days from meeting. 3/13/19. Okay? So, once you get someone to do it, again, give the call to the office and we can help you. And then you'll be back here. It's not a formal application process that has all kinds of statutory timelines, but you can come back informally, present your plan, and hopefully the commission will approve it, and we can then set a deadline for how long it will take to actually do the work. Right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good?
Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. V09-5, 35 Millow, pool, deck, shed, and conservation easement. Oh, boy. Oh, yeah. There we
Jason,
go.
Oakland, 35 Milo.
I'm Alexandra, 35 Milo.
So we're first-time home buyers, new to Monroe, and inherited a violation when we bought the property. We're before you today to clear this up.
All right, so you know the drill, you got a
We-
copy of
yeah.
this. the commission, just so you know, there's clearing, grubbing, displacement of soils, there's unpermitted clearing, grubbing, above-ground pool and deck within the 100-foot upland review and the conservation easement, unpermitted shed adjacent to the pool deck with a 100-foot upland review area, wetlands, boundary, unpermitted activities within the limits of the conservation easement, and the conservation was not filed as required as well. So, just a little bit of history on this. You guys bought this from the lender, correct?
We did.
Because they foreclosed on the property. Did they they disclosed all this to you?
They did at some point along the way. So, yes.
So you were aware of it when you were buying it?
At some later stage in the process, yes.
All right, so maybe I won't go there,
Yeah.
but I don't understand how they could do that and not, you know, if you weren't aware of it ahead of time. But I don't really want to go there because that's more of a private issue.
Yeah.
Okay, so a little bit of history on this for everybody's sake is that, if I'm remembering correctly, this came in quite some time ago. And the violation was discussed with the commission. And at that time, there was, you know, we sent out the notice of violation to the property owner. And I don't remember, but there was, I think there was it was a nephew or somebody connected with the, I think it was an older woman.
Yeah.
Who was ill and in the late stages of life. And the commission decided at that time that instead of trying to work out a solution with her, that they would just file it on the land records and deal with whoever was going to buy it. And so that's what they did. We filed it and in the hope that this day would come when new buyers. But this is a little different in that hopefully you knew what you were getting involved in.
To a degree, yes.
To a degree.
Not to
Okay.
this degree,
So,
but
yeah,
to a
we-
degree.
Okay, all right. Well, again, some of that might be an issue you might want to have with the whoever sold it to you. All right, so what this plan shows is that this cross-hatched area in all the different colors, that is the conservation easement. And that area is an area that is protected, and structures and development within that area is prohibited. If you look through your deed, I'm assuming at this point you went as far as looking through the deed, and, well, I guess it may not be in the deed, because it was on the original plans when this got approved, and it wasn't apparently, what I'm reading up here is apparently wasn't filed the way it was supposed to be filed in the deed, so it may not have been in there. But anyway, the cross-hatched area is the conservation easement. The green area, let me blow this up a little bit, is the wetland. The pink or purplish area is the upland review area, which again, you must have heard me explaining that to previous people, that that's a regulated area, not necessarily wetlands, but regulated to protect wetlands. And then I am trying to figure out what this, the darker purple
Concrete
area
monument.
is, I'm trying to figure out what that is.
Doesn't have any arrows going to get darker purple.
There's supposed to be markers there, and they're not there.
The purple area is disturbance in the upland review area that's not in the conservation area. That's what that is.
Okay.
These are technically not in, you can see how the cross-hatching stops. So this area here is not,
I know,
it is
that's
weird.
worst.
And it looks like what they did was they required that the wetlands be conservation easement. The conservation easement is exactly the limits of the wetlands in this case. So there was this finger that came up in here that wasn't wetlands, and therefore it wasn't conservation easement.
Ah, so the purple then is in the wetland.
This
So the pool
purple
and the
is,
deck is
not
still
only is the
conservation
pool there, but it's also in a wetland area,
Right.
yeah.
That's an above ground pool? It's like an-
Is this
All right,
all above
This
ground?
green area is the
Yes.
tree line today.
That means it's all gonna get removed.
So the tree line today does this, so it's quite a mess.
Mm.
Basically, everything from this area, very close to the house back is
Wetland.
either wetlands or not supposed to be touched.
Right.
With the exception of this upland review area here, it's a little skinny area that goes up there.
You can put the pool there.
Useless area.
A lap pool?
Yeah.
So, there's not much yard there. I mean, there's this area here.
It's one of those pieces of
Where
property
front
you
yard.
shouldn't
Where's the
have built
septic,
on.
I guess in the front there?
Yeah, do you know where your septic is?
The septic
Must
is
be
in the
here.
front, yeah, right about where your house is.
Yeah, it must be in there.
Okay.
So really, the majority of the yard, I guess, is this area here. That's really your yard. It's not a backyard, but it's a yard.
It's the yard, right.
Which incidentally can be, there are cases where people kind of use their front yard as their yard. It's just they will put in plantings and things like that so you can get the privacy so that you actually have a yard.
If
What
there,
are we doing about this here?
my question would be, was there any inclination that that pool was in the wrong spot ever? I mean,
The
did
the
anybody,
pool was never permitted. There's
was
no
never
permit.
permitted?
They just
But
built
it's
the
part of
pool.
your, it's part of the, it was part of the house when it was sold, correct? You guys
Yes.
always thought, you bought the house thinking that there was a pool there you were gonna be able to use.
We did.
But there was, so,
Now-
this we started this violation with the last owner.
The last
And we
owner.
filed the violation on the records, assuming, and we did that then,
That the real
hoping
estate-
that whoever bought the house, we knew it was gonna be sold shortly.
Yeah,
And so we filed it on the land records, knowing that, or hoping that whoever bought the house
and it was.
knew that there was a big problem.
And it was there, so the real estate agent didn't find it.
I don't know.
Well,
After
I know
we
that
filed it,
has
we don't
nothing to do
know.
with us, but that just boggles my mind.
We don't know.
Anyway,
Well, let me.
So here we are, what do we do with this? The problem here is we have a pool, a deck, and a shed, all not only in wetlands, also in a conservation easement.
If there's any consolation, the shed has since been removed. And
Yeah,
has
where's
been
the
reclaimed.
shed?
The shed is at the far.
Far in there.
Oh, it's up
right
here.
there.
Right
That's
there.
the shed.
All right, so the
Gone?
shed's gone.
Is gone.
So that's one item.
And has been reclaimed.
How's the pool?
The pool and deck are still in good condition.
You don't
and-
swim,
and of
right?
course, we were hoping to keep the pool, it was a
Pools are
major-
dangerous, you don't want to, it's a lot of work.
So,
Well, can you have it relocated to the back of the house?
it.
You mean the front of the house?
unfortunately-
No, I mean the back, yeah,
Yeah.
the back there.
Unfortunately not.
So
There,
close to the
it's
neighbor.
not in the
How long has it been
No, that
since you
was
replaced
setback.
the liner in that pool?
I don't know.
Ah, you
Again,
see?
yeah,
It's time.
so.
What's the setback to the back, 25 or 50?
I'd have
There's
to
no
look
room
it up,
back
but
there.
there's not, I
No, not
don't,
where that little.
I don't think there's enough room to put a
No.
pool back there in the setback
And there's
lines.
part of the deck actually that kind of extends into that as well too. That part of the deck, I believe, was permitted. Because only the lower deck, I don't think was permitted around
Okay,
that
all right.
pool.
So we can get, and that's something you definitely want to come in, we get confirmation on, because if you can
It-
save any
It's
part of it.
part of the as-built, the main deck structure attached to the house is part of the as-built.
Okay, all right. Well, that would be good if you could salvage that, at least.
We're hoping to salvage as much, if not all of it, as possible, but
You can salvage it, but you can't keep it there.
The problem is that where it is a conservation easement, and we're not really empowered to let you, to stamp that as approved.
Is it possible for us to say, they take all the structures out, restore just that one area where the pool was and let it stay grass? And like just restore it to
I
grass?
think the biggest problem is.
I know it's
the pool and the
conservation
deck.
easement, but
First,
so if we have to restore it, I mean, it potentially would be more damaging to the property to do that. I mean, it's all above ground for what that's worth.
Well, if they brought in fill to fill in,
they
hold the
filled
pool
it.
up, that would have to come out too, right?
Otherwise,
Well-
it's sunk.
As far as restoring the conservation easement, again, the town in the past has deferred that
To us.
responsibility to you, if it's an overlapping jurisdiction, which this is. So however you decide to restore the conservation easement, so far anyway, the town's been okay with it. Everything has to come out.
Yeah, I mean, I think,
Oh, 'cause that's
fortunately, that's what
it's
we've
in
done for
That's
everyone else.
unpermitted.
so
The
I have
the
to-
last case we had was a permitted pool, right? The one where,
Yeah, there
It was
was
a
one
permitted
where
pool.
there was a pool that had a permit, and the permit was issued under misinformation that was provided, and it got into a legal issue. And what you did with that was, you allowed the pool, you allowed the pool to stay temporarily until they have to replace the liner, and then they gotta get rid of it. But that had municipal estoppel associated with it from a legal perspective.
Yeah.
And it was a different situation. This isn't that situation. This is, they don't have municipal estoppel because they don't have a permit for the pool. We never.
Has to come out.
yeah, do we know if Wetlands was filled to put that pool in? Is that obvious? Anybody's?
If they're putting an above ground pool, they have to at least fill it with the sand.
Well, the sand underneath, but if it's a wetlands, if it was a wetlands and it was, wet, you would think that maybe they brought something to prop it up on.
They would have to, otherwise it would have sunk.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
pools don't last in wetlands unless they're filled.
but that's a tough one. I'd be okay with them restoring it and leaving it in a condition that it could actually be like played on.
I'm not really sure, I don't
I don't know if we're
think
allowed
that
It's a
anybody.
conservation easement, it shouldn't be used, period.
Well, you
It
should
could be used.
define, we
It could
should
be used.
define that.
Just can't.
It's a
you can't build on
conservation
it.
easement. You can go out in the conservation
Right, yeah,
easement.
yeah, but
Your
I'm-
kids can go out there and play in the
Passive
conservation.
use.
You just can't disturb
Maintain
it
it or-
any other way.
Yeah, there's no structures, there's no building, there's no nothing, it
Yeah,
all
no
has to
play
come out.
equipment, but kids can go out there and play, in the woods.
Build a fort, no.
No,
No.
you can't. No structures.
Sorry, it's,
Oh,
They could go out,
10,
It's almost-
15 wide.
try to find frogs.
Yeah,
yeah, I hate to do
I
it.
really hate to say this to you, but I don't know how you're gonna be able to keep that pool in deck, in that conservation easement. We cannot sign off on a letter saying that, that violation's is gonna remain until that conservation easement is brought back to the way it was before that deck and pool was put in there, unfortunately. And the shed, but she said the shed's already gone.
What about the fill?
I think if the structures come down and the markers go in where they're supposed to go in,
If it's not mounded up or anything,
I
Do we
don't.
need a soil scientist
Is
report
it
to find
flat?
out how much fill is in there?
I'm not interested in that, but that's just one man's
I
opinion.
hate to do
Well, they'd
it.
have to take the sand out and get it down to something that could restore it. They have to be able to grow something in it, right?
Mhm.
Can't just be left bland dirt, so they would have to either take, if it's fill, rock or gravel or whatever, that'd all have to come down, they'd have to get to some kind of topsoil layer, right?
yeah. It's a tough one.
Yeah.
And we really wouldn't wanna import anything, so they would have to go down until they got to the virgin soil. Unless it was skipped off to the side, like to make a base, if they excavated out the wetland soils and pushed it to the side, and then they could just push it back in and just get it so it's got some kind of organic cover and growth, right?
True.
So it's gonna be almost like digging in and find out what they did to get that pool in there and kind of just,
Okay, there's a layer of sand in there, so
yeah.
It's good turtle breeding habitat. Just take the pool out, the sand.
They don't live on, they don't live on the ocean.
Oh, did I say something?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So, yeah, sea turtles come all the
All
way
right,
inland.
all right, let's
to
push,
to
let's
Willow
push
Drive.
through.
Box turtles.
Let's
Yeah.
push through this. So what we need to have happen here is a plan for that to be restored, correct?
Remediation
A
solution.
remediation plan which involves removing the shed, well, the shed's already gone, the pool, the deck, and how it's gonna go back to the way it was. So,
Similar to what we just did of the previous one, the
Right.
remediation application.
Right.
Oh my God.
Are those concrete markers still in existence?
That's
There-
my,
We're not sure. It was recently surveyed, and she couldn't find them. So,
Interesting.
it says
They weren't
they were
bound
never
enough.
installed.
Never
Yeah.
installed,
Maybe they
oh,
have to
no
start
wonder,
putting
okay.
12
she,
12-foot
I
pipes.
did speak with,
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't see the never installed part.
well, when I spoke with her, she said she couldn't find them. She wasn't sure if they were never installed or if she just couldn't find them.
Oh, okay.
This was done maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, is my understanding.
So the one thing I didn't quite understand was it said that the conservation easement wasn't filed, but I think that's an error because I've got Schedule A of your deed, and it says, said premises are subject to the following: a conservation easement to the town of Monroe dated January 22nd, 1999, and recorded in volume 835 and page 312. So this was, not only do we file, you got the notice of violation, but clearly the information was available when you bought it. Whether they disclosed it or not, it still was available to you in a public record on the land records. So that's what makes it very difficult to, you can't really go back on that. 'Cause
Yeah.
it's
makes sense.
All right, so you were sitting there, you heard what the last guy had to do as far as come in and fill out the form for remediation and then get a plan for the commission, so it shows what you're gonna do and it's gonna show how you're gonna restore it in terms of, once the stuff is gone. Once you have somebody that's gonna do that for you, then you can come into the office and I can kind of work through it with you to help you to make sure it's got what you need to have. And then it's an informal process with the commission, so if you don't hit it the first time, you could come back and do what you're doing tonight with the commission.
We're not exactly clear what the concrete monument or approved equal is. Is that something that you guys?
Concrete monument or approved equal as per wetland officer, never installed.
Those are wetland markers.
No,
Look
you're
at
talking about the
way they're
markers.
spot.
Okay,
It's like a post
Okay.
with a marker
We don't do
on
it
it.
with concrete anymore.
okay.
Yeah, so apparently initially it was supposed to be marked, the easement was supposed to be marked apparently with monuments. Nowadays, when it goes through the subdivision process, we ask for iron pins.
Okay.
Concrete monuments are a little more durable, but they're more expensive. I'd be willing to just go with the pins, so that when
Approved
the
equal.
surveyor comes out to show you where this conservation easement is, if it can be pinned, I think that would be a compromise, might save you a few bucks.
Yeah, it's probably pretty costly to.
Well, they're gonna put their markers up,
Okay.
which are $1.50.
Okay,
And they go like every 50 feet. That is a requirement of the conservation easement, where when your surveyor comes out, that's probably where your cost is gonna be, because to survey it and mark it out is gonna be a few bucks to do that. And that's when the surveyor does it, it's kind of not useless, but it's not all that valuable unless the surveyor puts in markers so that we can go out and find them in the future, and you could find them, where the conservation, if you want to plant a bush or do something in your yard in the future, you may forget where the line is, and that way you can have a metal locator or find it with a shovel or something, and you'll know where the conservation is. what'll help in this case is they're gonna ask for markers that are above ground that will also show you where it is. Does that answer your question?
I think so, yeah, thank you. There are some areas in the blue or the purple shaded area there near the road way that is kind of an invasive area, some pricker bush and some other things that are just unsightly. Would we have to come before the commission again to do, if we wanted to do anything to kind of tidy that up?
That could be part of your remediation.
Actually, that's
plan.
a-
So wherever you get to do your plantings, you could ask them about that area, what they would suggest. It'll be a one-time, the remediation is kind of like a one-time deal. You come before, you get approval, and you go in there, and you do the work, you get it done. And then, as far as you're not allowed to do any more planting or clearing or anything like that, you can maintain for a short period of time what's in there and make sure it survives.
Okay.
But eventually, it's gonna go back to Mother Nature, and then you're not gonna deal with it anymore.
So is 60 days okay?
That
Can you have a
seems
plan
reasonable.
for us, Kevin?
Yeah.
You can always be earlier. If you find that you've got it done early and you want to get it off your plate,
Yeah.
bring it in earlier, no problem.
Sure. I don't know that 60 days will be able to accomplish the.
No, not
No, not to finish
That's
the
just the
work.
plan.
Just the plan.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
We'll give you time to fix it after.
Tomorrow is good.
Like,
Good luck, thank you.
Yeah, you want to jump on it as soon as possible, because when it comes to the
Planting
world of
season.
surveyors and plans, 60 days is a little tight.
Okay.
So jump on.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Good luck.
All right. So we're moving on to deliberation on completed hearings. We didn't complete anything.
Well,
We
It's
get to
11
see it
o'clock.
all
We did
over
send,
again.
no, we have to
You got-
approve what he wrote.
You got
I already
it.
approved
That's
it.
I'm not there
I read
yet.
it.
I'm not there yet.
Yeah, you got one to vote on.
But we completed items from this agenda we did not do. So we're gonna move on to IWC 2018-15, which is 575 Monroe Turnpike. Installation new septic, you know what it is. So at our last meeting, we have asked our staff to draft a letter of approval with conditions. We've all received that letter and we've all read it, correct? Okay, Scott.
Yeah, so for the record, you've all received it, you all read it. It consists of 6 pages. The first page is the application data, the number and all that stuff. And then it goes into listing the plans and the application-specific data. Second page is the voting record, goes into section A, which is items that you want addressed on the plan within 270 days, which is renumbering of the plan, relocation of the wetland marks to be shown on the edge of the grading, limits of the lawn to be maintained in lieu of the location on the silt barrier, relocation of the storm drainage discharge level, spreading more closely follow the total slope contour just below 296 contour, details showing the offered intersection of the interconnection, manifold-type pipe connection of the proposed retention gallery units, details of the dewatering measures in the wetland mark, proposed pipe trench grade, material dimensions, et cetera, for the details, revised drainage calculations, stage storage, tabular information, et cetera, calculation of water quality flow to be utilized for sizing a stormwater quality control unit. Then it goes on for standard comments that are in your typical, in all of your letters, the requirements on filing of the approved plans. Section B, timing, expiration, transfer, items 1, 2, and 3, standard requirements. Section C, conditions to be addressed in order listed prior to the construction, and that is standard items 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The requirement for $11,000 bond. Item D, condition to be addressed prior to the issuance of a CO, standard. Item E, condition to be addressed prior to the release of the bond, again, standard items. Item F, completely all the standard conditions of approval that you put in all your letters. One of them being the requirement for follow-up reporting of the wetlands planting plan. Trying to find which one says that. Yes, item number 9, that's item number 9. But I wanted to point that out, that's a 3-year monitoring period. And then it goes on, page 5, to just list the standard statements, clarification, and standards and conditions, and ends up on page 6, and that is it.
I have one addition, if I may, and I didn't realize this until it was much too late to contact you guys. And that was that a note should be put on the plan that there's no pesticides or herbicides to be applied on the property because it is a public water supply watershed. Other than that, I move that we approve.
No pesticides or herbicides to be utilized on the property? Sound good, or on?
Yeah, I think it was on the property that we were talking about.
Well, let's put within regulated areas.
Okay. That sounds good.
Okay, sorry.
I have a motion by Commissioner Spence to approve as amended, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion passes unanimously. All right, looking at our rest of our agenda, I think we go all the way down. We're tabling our minutes, correct?
Correct. We
Correspondence. somebody
got
from
a notice from somebody.
Connecticut Pond
Having to
Service.
do- Connecticut Pond Service, thank you. Having to do with applying aquatic herbicides to the Northbrook condominium pond.
Okay. And that's that.
Move to adjourn.
Motion-
Second.
Who's that? Clark.
All those in favor to adjourn, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Adjourned. Lord. Creepers.